It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy, Alex, Jason, all here. We'll talk about Apple's trust-eroding wallet, and they're looking at using another AI instead of Siri. Could that be? And how Apple will respond to Germany, the U.S., the Department of Justice. They're in trouble everywhere. All that and more coming up next on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 979, recorded Tuesday, July 1st, 2025. Matt Baloney. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we cover the latest Apple news with the great MacBreak Weekly team. Leading off, playing first base, Mr. Jason Snell of sixcolors.com.
Hello, team. Good to be here.
Yes.
Happy to join you.
Nice to have you.
Good to be here.
In right field, we've got Alex Lindsay from officehours.global batting second.
Hello, hello.
And Andy Nako is a cleanup hitter. He's out there in left field. Hello, Andy.
That's fine. That's where Carl Yastrzemski wound up late in his career. I'll take that.
That's okay. We are here. Well, there's a couple of things. Let's start with the wallet.
Technically,
game.
Leo, by the way, I should say you are a cleanup hitter because the fourth
I'm the cleanup hitter. I'm fourth.
It's a cleanup hitter. So
yeah.
Andy's in a very important power spot, but you're the cleanup
He's
hitter. I
the
don't know what
power
position you're
hitter.
playing. You may be our pitcher for all we know.
I could be the
That's
DH.
the host. You could be the DH.
I could be the DH.
You're a
I've
Shohei
decided.
Ohtani type. We've always said that about you.
I can pitch and hit. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm calling it Wallet Gate. Boy, John Gruber is salty over all this. Now, have any of you yet seen an F1 ad in your wallet? Because I still haven't.
Yeah,
So
I got one in the wallet app. I didn't see the notification, but I have most of my notifications turned off.
Yeah, me too.
But I did in the wallet app. There was a little temporary thing with a close icon on it that said,
well, how do you
can
feel about that,
you can
Jason
get a deal.
Snell? What do you think?
I kind of don't care. There are a lot of people clutching pearls about, sorry to just come out strong, but like my take is not that it's fine. My take is that Apple has been pushing ads to us like everybody else for a long time now. And I don't think the fact that it came from the wallet app instead of the TV app makes a whole lot of difference. I think that it's, my personal philosophy about push notifications is you shouldn't push marketing notifications unless you offer an option to turn them off. And that should be for every app from every company. And the irony is that in the 26 operating systems, you can turn off marketing messages in Wallet, but not in the currently shipping version.
Oh, interesting. So this will be fixed in 26.
It will be fixed in 26. That's a nice, let's just put that on a t-shirt, fixed in 26. But so I don't like it, but I have a hard time creating a lot of anger about it just because everybody abuses push notifications. People say, oh, well, Apple's guidelines. I mean, like, they're guidelines. They're like, you shouldn't do that. But everybody does it, including Apple, and that's just the way of the world. So is this a slightly sort of beaten down take on my part? Yes, it is. But I feel like I feel like Apple has committed so many crimes that on this front that this is just like another one on the list. So it's hard for me to get really mad about it.
Yeah, Casey List started the whole thing, and this is the latest one from Claude Zients. Here's his real wallet with a little card in it. That did not happen. But John Gruber says it's trust eroding. John Gruber says it's basically ruined everything Apple has done.
I think my problem is I use the wallet so little that I was kind of like, okay, well, whatever. Like, I don't like I can't remember because I don't use the wallet because if you make the mistake of putting your flight into your wallet, it will remind you of that every 10 minutes for the next 6 years. Like it's just like constantly like your flight's here. And I was just like, never want to put anything in the wallet. Yeah. I used it for a concert on Friday, but that was kind of like a new thing, and I couldn't even
kind of have
find
it. Like the Giants games, you put it in your wallet.
Printed out. I could have printed it out, or I could have had.
Yeah, you could print it out, but you look like a caveman.
Yeah, most of those you can have it in the app, and you don't actually have to put it in the wallet. You can just have it in the app. I agree with Gruber's metaphor in the sense that erosion, right? An erosion is a long-term process done by individual drips of water over many, many years. And I agree with that. I feel like this is just another drip in it, and I think the fact that this happened to come out in Wallet, I don't think Wallet is some sort of magic sacrosanct place that should never have anything in it. I don't think it's appropriate, and I think you should be able to opt out of these things. But I don't know. Maybe it's just me saying it's the way of the world. Like, should they have done it? Well, no, but they also spent hundreds of millions of dollars on a movie and are trying to work with their partners to sell people on the movie. So I get it.
I agree. I mean, I think that the problem is that there's still a persistent idea of, oh, Apple's a $3 trillion company with an immense amount of power, but they're not like other super huge international powerful companies that are amongst the most valuable in the entire world. They would never do that. Ignoring that, well, yeah, they are doing that. They've always done that. They've just done it in ways that we don't necessarily notice or don't necessarily find all that offensive, which is not me throwing up my hands and being cynical and saying, well, of course, they're going to introduce crap and whatever they want. But the thing is, like, they're not necessarily better than any other company. They care about people until there's a really good business reason not to care about people, in which case the business plan, as always, has to come first. And that's not an evil thing about Apple. It's not even necessarily an evil thing about businesses. It's just the way things work. The business plan always comes first, and the user will always come second.
I'm curious. I don't even know if they were targeting anybody. I mean, I don't think we know whether it was targeting anybody.
That's what I'm wondering, because I didn't get it. But
I didn't get it. And I did all the things that you would need to do to get an F1 invite. so like, and so I don't know how targeted it was as opposed to some random sample to see how it worked. I think that I think F1, number one is I think Eddie Q wants F1 to be successful a lot. And I think this is something that he's really interested in. I think number two is that that Apple is interested in how far could they actually make a film release work. I don't think that they're planning to do this for everybody's films. I think they're planning to do this if they do it for their films. And I think that they want to see if they put out a film every 6 months or because I think Apple's going to probably stop making features in the next, any kind of features that aren't going to theatrical probably this year or next year. And then they'll release maybe 3 to 4 features, maybe a year. The rest of it's all going to be, that's where most people are going, all series and everything else, because series are better for subscriptions. And so I think that, but Apple also, I think, is looking at if we can move the needle. They've said this, if they can move, they want to see what they can do as far as moving the needle towards a cultural push. F1 is not as well known in the United States. They want to see if they can move that needle forward and possibly buy some of the broadcast rights for F1. And I think this got into the convolution of a whole lot of things that Apple wants to do. And again, I don't know. I think that the press is really upset. I don't know if anybody else even noticed that it happened or cared. I don't even think they thought.
Well, we've all seen ads so many places. Maybe nobody's really thinking about it.
Thought that the wallet.
I understand why Apple did it. That's not the question. The question is, A, did they target it? In which case, the sacrosanct. This is what Gruber's upset about: the sacrosanct privacy of your wallet.
Well, there's ways to do that without taking away your privacy as well. Like you could have the wallet looking for something without you knowing anything about it. So you broadcast it out to everyone, and based on what's sitting in your wallet, it either grabs it or doesn't. But you don't need to know anything about the user to send. The way that Facebook works, you need to know a lot about the user. But the way that you can build systems that allow that it's looking for something, but it's sent to everyone. So if it was they could target it without having any information about you. And so that might be the case. But I don't think that I say that, but I don't think they targeted anybody. I think it was a random dispersion of stuff to people's wallets. Because
would it be different if they did?
No. Again, if they started, I think it would be right if what they did is they have a central amount of data about you that they used to then target you. I think that's more problematic. I think that if they said, "Oh, this is the kind of person who would go see this movie," so let's put that little thing in there. But if the wallet,
that would be very problematic.
If the wallet's making that decision and they're sending out an anonymous, undirected,
that's a lot of speculation, Alex. Nobody knows what.
But I'm saying we don't know, and so we can't.
But the assumption is always going to be by normal people. Well, I guess my wallet's not private.
Maybe
I think that's a leap. I think that's
a leap.
a leap. I think that's
normal
tech
people
people
don't even care.
overthinking it. I think
Yeah.
I think people don't care. They know that it works this way. They may assume that and not care, or they may not assume it. But saying, "Oh, a push notification that's generic that came out of the Wallet app," if you notice it's in the Wallet app, that's about Apple Pay, by the way, so it has a clear relevance to the Wallet app.
Right.
Is somehow going to be perceived by regular people as a breach of trust. Like, will there be some people? Sure. People believe anything, right? We live in a world where people believe conspiracies of all sorts that are nonsense. I'm sure some of those people might believe this about this, but I don't. I think this is a little bit too much tech industry navel-gazy for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Mike on Twitter agrees with you, so we're going to move on. He says,
Great, my
move
win.
on.
That's
Move
it.
on. You're right, Mike. We're
Gavel.
moving on.
Boom. Done.
But Gruber is pretty upset. I mean, it's interesting. Maybe he's decided, well, if I'm going to be a pariah in the Apple world, I might as well just go all in.
Yeah,
And-
he's a real pariah getting invited to Apple Park and getting briefings and stuff.
Oh, let me tell you what pariah is.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
All right, let's talk about AI because Mark Gurman's big scoop on Sunday was Apple has decided, or at least is weighing the possibility of giving up on its AI and Siri and using Anthropic or OpenAI.
Sounds like they're looking at or talking to Anthropic and OpenAI. Like, look, a few months ago there was that report, I think, from Gurman, who said with the new Siri team, everything was on the table. And this is that thing that we talked about where there's a real lack of trust, I think, inside Apple to the people who are building their models, or at least, if you want to be generous, an understanding that the model building team at Apple is behind on chatbot kind of stuff, and they're going to need time to catch up, and that Siri is burning in the meantime. I mean, Siri is burned to the ground in the meantime. So it would be irresponsible not to be saying, is there some existing technology we can use to ship AI Siri, smarter Siri, not now, but like soon, real soon. And so, of course, you should, again, I would say it's almost malpractice if you weren't talking to Perplexity and OpenAI. And like, I mean, you've got to.
Yeah. Yeah. There's also like, I'm a little bit, I don't know, curious about all these discussions because Apple is probably the only major company that doesn't need to be in a huge rush. They can take 2 or 3 years to build their core models and rely on them. And of course, extend to all the other ones if they actually want to, if any user wants to use OpenAI, wants to use Gemini or anything like that. The more interesting thing in that report, I thought, was that Apple is having the report that Apple's having a hard time retaining talent because, I mean, Apple can't match the salaries that other companies are offering, the opportunities or the prestige that come with offering competing companies. The report also said that one of the core Siri teams actually threatened to walk if they weren't given like a huge bump in compensation, given the volatility of the AI the workforce right now. So that shows that Apple is facing threats on multiple fronts, trying to get this thing shipped out. If they do want to keep all this in-house, they're going to have to keep their researchers happy. And this is not a marketplace where you can be Apple and simply say, oh, well, you're going to be sworn to secrecy. No, you can't share on your LinkedIn all this wonderful research and breakthroughs you're doing to raise your own profile and raise your own career outside of Apple, and you'll take basically what we think is the fair market rate. Like, no, you're going to have to keep making us giving us enticements to stay here because we can make so much money working for anybody else right now. Excuse me, that's not a fact, but they're so hot in the employment marketplace right now that Apple really has to give them pretty much whatever they want if they're going to keep this core team together.
According to Apple insider Tom Gunter, one of Apple's most senior large language model researchers, has left the company after 8 years. And of course, there is a revolt, as you said. It is speculated among Apple's AI researchers. What Gurman says is that Apple has asked both Anthropic and OpenAI if they could train their models to work on Apple's servers. So they would be basically saying, yeah, Siri's not working out so much on our cloud infrastructure. So could we use yours? I think that's a big deal. It seems like this is a well-sourced story.
And again, the other thing though is that a lot of times large companies will use a outside vendor to solve a problem while they're figuring it out. Like they're not, when Google Hangouts came out, it wasn't necessarily all Google's infrastructure.
But does Apple do that? I know other companies do that, but does Apple do that?
Yeah, I think they do. Yeah, so I think that you outsource things until you have it working internally, and then you slowly pull it back into the system.
Actually, that's the story of Apple in China. Is how they outsourced. After a long time, Steve Jobs did not want to ever have anybody make Apple Macintoshes but Apple. But when they started outsourcing it to contract manufacturers, it worked so well. Tim Cook became the master of it.
Yeah, I was under the impression that iCloud was running on Google servers and I think Amazon servers as well. And I think it probably still is in part.
That's a good point.
Right,
That's
they have to build up server capacity of their own, which they have done. But like they have never had an issue with doing that. And why would they? It's not their business that they're in.
Well, I would actually welcome, especially now that I've used Amazon's Echo Plus, and it's so bad. I would welcome seeing OpenAI or Anthropic.
The only trouble is that Apple from day one has been saying, "Oh gosh, we're going to be privacy focused. How can it's not
well, if it's running on their servers, it's the same. They would just be using the models on their servers, so it would still have the same.
Okay, so
it doesn't exfiltrate stuff to those companies.
So as long as OpenAI is okay, doesn't like make requests, let's say, that would violate that initial covenant. I mean, they certainly. They're interested in making money, certainly, and the same reason why Google is more than willing to like sell them cloud compute, because they are in the business of serving cloud.
I don't think
compute,
it's a stretch to say if Apple's saying we want it to run on our infrastructure, they're also saying that means no access.
We have to assume. Yeah.
Otherwise, they would do what they're already doing. I mean, you can already send information to ChatGPT. If Siri doesn't like your question, and she says, "Well, okay, but you can use ChatGPT if you must."
Exactly. It's second-class citizen status.
Right. This is not what they're talking about.
If they're elevating it to like an Apple level status, and again, it's not unprecedented. People, again, Google Search shares data on device, and it is the preferred search tool, like on iPhone. So it's not unprecedented, but it is something we shouldn't just simply assume that if Apple were to strike a deal to run OpenAI models on Apple's Apple Intelligence server hardware, that it would absolutely have the exact same controls and the exact same privacy. That's
a good point. Google gets a lot of information by the search deal. Yeah.
It's a good guess, but we shouldn't absolutely assume that would be true.
And by the way, Gurman says Apple's investigation into the third-party models is at an early stage, and the company hasn't made a final decision yet. But I think it is kind of interesting that they would even be thinking about it. That's, to me, the sound of, is it safe to say panic?
They touched the hot stove. They don't want to get burned again. I think they appreciate that they're not going to solve this in the next couple of years. And as Jason said, it's okay to sort of like rely on a crutch while they develop that model that they want to own and control 100%.
And I think it's realism. I think it was less of a panic of the folks that are putting it together and more of the way the PR was managed last year. So, I mean, I think that Apple could have very easily been announcing partnerships with all these folks, putting those things together, integrating it with what they had. And I think that they just wanted to oversell the fact they could do it all themselves. And I don't think they needed to do that. And I think that it was but it was more of a PR disaster than an actual problem for where they're at. I don't think that I don't see that there's any real fire here other than the fireplace. I think that they have to figure out how they're going to incorporate AI, but whether they're doing it all or other people are doing it, I think that there are massive advantages to Apple building very powerful models on device and onto a server. And I think that being able to provide, and I think to be competitive, I think Google's going to do that with the Android, on Android, where they're doing more and more of the models on the phone. So I think that over a long period of time is something that Apple has to figure out. But I don't think that they have to figure it out today or tomorrow or next year or even the year after.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to take that long to do it. It's a hard thing to do.
Apparently, Apple nearly lost the entire team behind their open source machine learning framework optimized for silicon. The engineers reportedly threatened to quit.
Yeah, this is their big challenge right now. Is it's not just a brain drain, it's also identifying who your talented players are, because I think, I mean, it's hard to say. It sure looks from the outside like John Giannandrea, when he came over from Google, built a team that was focused on certain kinds of machine learning and not others, and that they have a culture that is, for whatever reason, has sort of like failed to meet the moment, at least in areas that are very visible. And I keep thinking, so Gurman talks about this, about that there are a bunch of people who are thinking of leaving, and there was a one group that they sort of like had to make a big offer to, and Mark Zuckerberg is out there offering people,
there's some big checks being written right now,
six-figure checks and all of that. So the question, though, if you're Apple leadership, is, do you believe in your ML people or not? And the one way to read Gurman's piece is, oh boy, they're going to have a huge brain drain where they're going to lose all these talented people. The other way to read it is, what do you do if you have an organization that you think is dysfunctional and isn't up to the challenge? And the answer is, you let them go because they failed.
Right.
And I think that one group that they kept, that's building those ML tools, they found the value in them and they wanted to keep them. But I think the question is still there about, how do they feel about John Giannandrea and his team, and what they've been able to do and what they haven't been able to do. And if this is existential for Apple, do they need a new team? Do they need to do some acqui-hire kind of things? Do they need to change the management there? And that at that point, you're looking at an org chart, and you've got to be in the inside the black box in order to do that part. Because I mean, that's the question, right? The big question is, do you, if you're an internal Apple person, think that Apple can catch up to what these other chatbots are doing for Siri purposes in a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or never? And then choose accordingly.
There's a precedent for this, because Meta seems like they're doing exactly that. Mark Zuckerberg, all those big checks he's writing are to build a different team than his Llama team, a super intelligence team. Yeah. And it looks as if he's thinking, Llama schmama. Let's move in another direction.
Well, and again, my whole family uses ChatGPT every day, all day, and doesn't care whether Siri can do it or not. They've given up on Siri. The other thing is that how many people really care? I think that people talk about it like, oh, Siri's got to fix it. I think they could probably throw Siri away or leave Siri the way Siri is, because it's now gotten to the point for most of us that it's as easy to use ChatGPT as it is to use Siri, to do almost everything that you want to do. So I think that I'm not clear that again, that it really matters about fixing Siri. I think they can just leave Siri the way Siri is and figure out what they're going to do next. I think there's always this mistake of, hey, we want to try to fix the thing that we have. Sometimes the best thing to do for the thing you had was to make it obsolete. I think just trying to re-gear it is going to be much harder than just coming out with something new in 2 years.
It might be a question for our AI show, Intelligent Machines, which is tomorrow, but it does make me start to think that even though the techniques being used by all the AI companies are well known, that only a handful of companies really seem to be able to do it. Amazon's struggling with Alexa Plus. Apple's obviously struggling. Yeah. Meta's struggling. It's OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google.
But every established company always has trouble fitting the new model. It's the new wine into the old wineskin.
True.
They can't figure out.
Well, but Google are new companies. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
They're new, and and it's this new way of thinking, and they have to protect their the privacy. They have to protect the brand. They have to protect all these other things. They have to make sure that it all ties into this thing and what happens here. And people, then you worry about, if I make this available over here, everyone's going to want it over there, and I won't be able to do that, And so there's all these complex pieces that I think that for established companies, this is why companies get disrupted. It's because they can't. Right. This is why Boeing got disrupted by SpaceX, is because they have old ways of doing things that don't fit into the new process.
May be that Google's only a player because the technologies were invented at Google, and there's just a little inertia.
They've been thinking about it. Google's been working on this for so long.
Yeah, they invented it all. I mean, it all started at Google. All these people were at Google.
It's 15, almost 20 years old at Google.
Although Google had to acquire DeepMind to get the real talent. Right. DeepMind was also a startup. So maybe you're right. Maybe the incumbents just don't have a shot at
the other thing that we're seeing is that if you're a programmer, if you're a junior programmer, you're probably in a lot of trouble. If you're a senior programmer or a very adept programmer, the value of people who can still understand the code, especially related to AI.
Oh, big bucks.
It's like sports team problems.
It is. Yeah. And there's no salary cap in these big companies.
Yeah. I wanted to say a little thing about that, which is I've seen some people be kind of outraged by these outrageous amounts of money that are being offered to programmers who are doing, basically AI researchers. Like, folks, do you see what these companies are worth? And that how much of their net worth is built up in
they're talking
how they
Brock
respond
Purdy
to AI
money here, man.
I
They're
mean,
talking.
Well, that was going to be my example, which is people complain about. I mean, first off, people complain about people getting paid a lot of money. People who don't make that amount of money complain about that, and they say nobody's worth that. It's like, okay, but how broken do you have to be in your worldview to look at companies that are worth $1 trillion and say that, it turns out there are 100 people who are going to determine the future value of that corporation, and say they don't deserve more than making $200,000 a year? It's ridiculous. It's just like saying if that baseball team is worth $1 billion. And you've got an all-star, perennial, one of the 10 best players in baseball, and you're going to sign him to a contract for 10 years for $700 million. That is like he's overpaid. It's like, well, no, he's not, because his value to that $1 trillion corporation or $1 billion corporation is enormous, and that is, I mean, so I hope those people get paid. I really hope they do, because they deserve it. They have, like, if you're Mark Zuckerberg, I really think his attitude is good here, which is it's only money, right? Like he's got
plenty of it,
all the money, and if it's only money, you've got all the money.
He's not renting Venice for the weekend,
and it is critical. You believe it's critical to the future of your business. Why would you not spend the money?
Yeah, and remember, back in the Steve Jobs era, they had all the Silicon Valley CEOs basically had an agreement that we're going to create an artificial environment where
trouble for it.
That'll keep that if someone where we won't hire from each other, and therefore that will keep the salaries low because they can't simply take a better offer from a competing company. So it is exceptionally good that people are getting paid what their work, what their contribution to the company is valued, is actually worth.
They lost that antitrust case.
And think how about I mean, the whole poaching thing is kind of disgusting, especially in California, where there's no such thing as a non-compete clause in California. And so, like, to have the Steve Jobs and Eric Schmidt agree not to hire each other's people is really gross. But I'd also say it feels kind of broken to me. And I know that this is a thing that is broken, and VCs make a lot of money on how broken it is. Because right now, the perception is that the only way to, if you're an incredibly talented person in Silicon Valley, to make a lot of money is you leave your giant company, you do a startup, you take a bunch of VC money, and then you get bought out. And then
often
in the
by
buyout,
the company that you left.
Yeah, you get bought out, you make a lot of money, the VCs make a lot of money, and the company you left bought you back for a huge amount of money. I mean, we just saw that app that is being worked on, that's what software applications, that it's the Sky, which is basically the shortcuts team at Apple left and built an entire utility that uses AI to let you do automations on the Mac.
Were they the workflow people who were bought by Apple?
Bought by Apple.
Left Apple?
And then they left Apple and they started a new company, and you look at their product and you say, why is that not part of the system software? And the answer is because they weren't allowed to do that inside Apple, and because this way they get investments, they get money, and they'll get bought by somebody. And so I kind of like how old-fashioned Mark Zuckerberg is being and saying, you know what, I'm just going to pay you a lot of money to stay here and work for me. Like, yes, do that.
And Facebook's really good at that. Like they give people that work there, like, here's $1 million of stock for the next couple of years. And when we get to the end of that, we'll give you another $1 million of stock. They understand that's their currency that they have is currency, and I think that
it's literally currency.
It turns out they don't need anything else. But the interesting thing is that a lot of times you see people go into these companies, they get bought out by the company, and they have all these ideas. If only I had the resources of this big company, I could boil the ocean. And then they get there and they're drowned. They just drown in the ocean of process, right? And they can't get done what they want to get done. They're now, and then they also are not getting compensated as much as they could if they sold, made in their own company. So you're 100% right. And then they wait for the stock to vest. And then once it's vested, they go, okay, well, I'll go out and do it again. I know someone who sold a company to Google. They sold 3 companies to Google. Like they got in, they vested, they went out, they started another company, came back in. And for the big companies, sometimes it works because the fluidness for Google, it works because the fluidness of how people think is different in a big company. There's just too much. You're protecting your 401k. You're trying to figure things out. And there's things you'll do in your garage that you won't do in a big company. And so I think that's the hard part that all these companies have to kind of manage right now. But I think that Apple is going to have to, like everybody else, if Apple doesn't get aggressive, they have the money. Like as Jason said, like Facebook's got the money and Apple's got more money, and they are going to have to spend it on the talent, or they're not going to be able to keep. They're not going to be competitive at all. They might as well just outsource it if they're not going to be ready to spend 20, 30, $40 million a year on a handful of people, because not all the programmers, the way they think, we have a huge feeder system for quarterbacks in the United States, and you get to the end of the year and there's maybe 6 out of 10 million, 20 million that started at 5 years old. There's now 6 that we think that can actually make a team go forward. The programmers are the same. Like there's a handful of programmers that they're not all interchangeable. It's not like, oh, you can code now, you can do the same thing. The way they think, the way that they approach it, how they innovate. There's a handful of them that are way better than everybody else in the vertical that they're in, right? And it happens to be that the sun is shining on AI right now.
It's a good time to be an AI guy.
Oh, man.
You said 10, 20, 30, 40 million. Could be a lot more than that, actually. Looks like might be even as much as 100 million a year.
Facebook walked that back and said that's a multi-year contract for 100 million. They didn't say that they weren't paying 100 million.
They said for some people. I think there's weasel words in what Facebook said. It sounds like some people did in fact get a pretty big
if they make it into the
bonus.
postseason.
Right, exactly. There were the bonuses.
Yeah. All right, let's take a little break. More to come. iOS updates, macOS updates. We've got beta 2 for the new operating system. We also have some trouble in the EU, but Apple's got a solution. And more coming up in just a bit with Andy Anako, Jason Snell, Alex Lindsay. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Brought to you today by 1Password. Oh, I know you know that name. But 1Password is more than just a password manager. Let me tell you a little bit about it. Over half of IT professionals say that securing SaaS apps is their biggest challenge. With a growing problem of not just SaaS sprawl, but shadow IT, and we're talking chatbots, but a whole lot more, it's not hard to see why. Thankfully, 1Password has a solution. Trelica by 1Password can discover and secure access to all your apps, whether you've got them under management or not. Trelica by 1Password inventories every app in use at your company, and then pre-populated app profiles assess SaaS risks, letting you manage access, optimize spend, and enforce security best practices across every app your employees use, including shadow IT. It's also great for securely onboarding and offboarding employees and meeting your compliance goals. Trelica by 1Password provides a complete solution for SaaS access governance. And it's just one of the ways that Extended Access Management, EAM, helps teams strengthen compliance and security. 1Password's award-winning password manager is trusted by millions of users at over 150,000 businesses, from IBM to Slack. And now they're securing more than just passwords with 1Password Extended Access Management. And of course, 1Password is super secure, ISO 27001 certified with regular third-party audits and the industry's largest bug bounty. 1Password exceeds standards set by various authorities and is a leader in security. Take the first step to better security for your team by securing credentials and protecting every application, even unmanaged shadow IT. Learn more at 1password.com/MacBreak. That's 1password.com/MacBreak, all lowercase. 1Password. Thank you, 1Password, for supporting MacBreak Weekly. We really appreciate it. Second betas but why are we calling it iOS 18.6, macOS 15.6, watchOS 11.6.
Those are uninteresting betas that nobody's
These are
running.
not the 26 betas. These are the existing OS betas.
Yeah. Like I said, who's running these? I guess people have to who are testing things, but the rest of us have all moved on.
moved on.
Cutting edge betas. These are just, this is cleanup work at the end of the old cycle.
So, how soon before the public beta is for 26? What do you think? They said this month, right?
Well, it's any day now, but my guess it'll be in a couple weeks.
July 30th.
Could be as late as
It's
July
so
30th.
honestly, it's so solid already that I would imagine it would be soon.
Is it?
However, it is. However, usually what happens is the public beta happens like a week after the same developer release goes out, so that they can check and make sure there's nothing really bad.
Last chance.
There hasn't been a developer beta this week yet. Maybe it'll come, but it hasn't happened yet. So if that's the case, maybe it's next week that comes out, and then maybe the following week. Also, you probably don't want to do this over the 4th of July weekend. So if I had to guess, and I don't have any inside knowledge of this about when it's going to be released, but if I had to guess, I'd say, you know what, July 15th sounds pretty good. But then again, if something weird happens with Developer Beta 3, they might say no, and push it off a little bit further. And they have the whole month as a target. But my guess would probably be smack in the middle.
Yeah, okay. I'm just wondering what we haven't seen yet. What haven't they implemented yet? Are there big hunks that they haven't even announced yet? I don't doubt you at all. I'm just saying that we're still in a dev beta process, and I don't think they've shown all their cards yet. So I'm hoping things progress well. I mean, I've been using the dev beta like on a daily basis on my iPhone 14 Pro, and I concur. I have not even seen any problems with battery life, which is usually the biggest thing you can count on a developer beta, because that's before they do all the fine tuning for extending battery life, and it's been very, very stable. I'm having so much difficulty resisting the urge to install it on my iPad, because I use my iPad all the time. It has to work and everything has to be compatible with it. But it's been so stable on every other platform that I've been using that's like,
Jason, should Andy do it?
Walk on the wild side, dude.
I am entirely on the betas now. Entirely.
Yeah.
All of
they're
my
that
devices are on the betas now, other than I guess my Apple Watch isn't yet, although I probably should just do that too. And part of that is because of what my job is, but also in previous summers, I have waited because I've been like, do I really need? And I realized partly for my job and also partly because I have some extra hardware that I installed it on, but after the first week of the experience being pretty solid, I just went ahead and just jumped in. So it's not for everybody, but my hope is that especially when public beta time happens, that it will be not an unpleasant experience for people.
And most apps work pretty well. There's no.
I haven't had any
app gaps.
Any real incompatibilities. There are occasionally apps, like I have one app that I used to just do. It's an audio app, and I used to be able to process audio in it and do Command S to save it. And I realized, Command S doesn't seem to save it, but exporting that file works fine. And that is literally the only thing that I've noticed across all of my apps.
Wow.
So, yeah. It's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
All right.
iPadOS is a significant enough update. Like, like that's where the temptation comes. I'm definitely not waiting.
It is. Although macOS is too. Like between the new Spotlight and menu bar stuff, I would say macOS has got a lot going for it too. But yes, iOS is number one.
Yeah.
iPadOS is number one.
Yeah.
Well, if you're in the EU, I have bad news for you. You're going to get some of them, but this is almost a Trumpian thing. Well, you could forget about all the new iOS 26 features, EU. Till you cooperate with us, we're not going to cooperate with you. Is it retaliation? Why? We've already made the decision, says Kyle Andier, Vice President of Apple Legal, to delay the release of products and features we announced this month for our EU customers. The changes that the EU has forced on Apple, quote, create real privacy, security, and safety risks to our users. So it does sound like a little bit like, so there.
Yeah, it's a little bit complicated though, because one of the problems with, again, I'm consistently not necessarily universally pro regulation, but I'm definitely not against it. The thing is, the regulations in the digital and the DMA and other stuff, it's not as specific and clear cut as to how Apple should comply with this as it should be. That gives, I think, Apple a certain amount of credibility in saying, we don't know how to comply with this, therefore we don't want to be hit with another $500 million fine. Now, we've also seen just last week the environmental nutrition label law that went into effect, where they said, hey, we're complying with this, and we're actually going to publish this paper on here's how we came up with these numbers in hopes that it will help you, the EU, be more specific about how to make these labels more efficient and more accurate and more useful for the consumer. But again, I don't think they were facing a $500 million fine. And also, this is printing up a bunch of labels is not all that difficult. Whereas re-engineering your app store is a very big deal. Rewriting policies in a way that even if Apple was interested in making a good faith effort to do what the EU was clearly telling them to do, which they are not doing at all. Even if they were making a good faith effort, this is not the sort of stuff that you can just simply drop a penny and you get the candy out and it works.
It's kind of a back and forth negotiation, right? The Apple has changed their terms Originally, Apple said developers, you can add one single static URL in your app, and they restricted tracking parameters, redirects, intermediate links.
It's it's a pretty dramatic change.
They've opened it up, yeah.
They've opened that up like they have in the US, although there's some commission things, and they changed all the terms. I mean, essentially, in the EU, the terms are totally different starting either now or January 1st, where like it goes to a max of 20%. And small business is 15 or 13%. And that what they're doing is they're doing a much lower commission, and then they're doing a 5% core technology commission on top of that for revenue, whether it's in or out of the App Store. And so that means you're not penalized if you opt to also be available either on your own website, which is also a new feature. If you qualify as a developer in good standing, you can just offer your app on your website. You don't need to be, remember there was that weird construction where it was like, let's free the users from the App Store by making it mandatory that there be other app stores. And it's like, well, what about no app stores? They're going to do that now. So it's a huge restructuring of the developer terms that might be good. It's complicated, right? And I think in many ways, Apple is trying to say, okay, you want it the way you want it. We're going to show you the complexity of what we're doing here. There's also a weird tier where you get like no App Store promotion or reviews or stuff, which is very much Apple saying, we feel we add value that you're not paying attention to, and we're going to point out that we add value beyond just hosting this, and it's not just about us having control. I think they kind of overstate it, but it is fair for them to say it. Go ahead, Alex.
I think that's also, that 5% is also for the Tim Sweeneys out there that say they don't really need Apple to do anything for them. So for a very large company, Spotify, the 5% makes sense. Spotify, they've got their own pipeline, their PR pipeline. So this is kind of the no frills version.
Yeah, but we're not going to help you either, right? Like it's like literally, we're not going to help you.
And these companies have said they don't need any.
They don't need the help. I think there's a fair point that says that there are certain giant companies that do not need Apple's help, that Apple's not substantially contributing to their business. I mean, it really is just a place for them to put the app that's extruding from the service that they sell. And I think that that's fair. I do think also, though, they're making the point that, that they've said all along, which is, look, we offer value to developers that, and so now we've created this tier 1 that offers no value to developers, and you can see
access to the platform,
other than access. Exactly right. And
you get app distribution and delivery, trust and safety features, app management. You lose automatic app updates, automatic downloads across devices. So actually, this is really more of a pain for customers, because I download Spotify on my phone. It doesn't go to the...
But Spotify
it also doesn't include promotions, search suggestions, ratings, and reviews on product listings, including inclusion and personalized recommendations, developer
almost
marketing
nobody
tools.
is
All the
going to take this feature. But they're basically like, if you want to collect the money and not have any help from us, go ahead. Right. And it does. I think it's kind of pointed to the EU as well, where they're saying, look, We're charging that same core technology commission to everybody, which I should say also is
that's a big change.
It
The
is a
core
huge
technology
update
fee.
because they used to count it per install above
Yeah.
$1 million, and it was really a mess. And it basically created enough potential harm to keep people from opting into the new rules. Now everybody's going to be on the new rules, but those aren't the rules anymore. It's based on revenue. It's not based on, and it's based on new revenue. So it's not based on counting app installs or anything like that anymore.
That's huge. This is very controversial.
A lot of these things are actually good. It just took them like a second take to get there, but they did get there. They
get there dragging their feet. Apple said the European Commission is requiring Apple to make a series of additional changes to the App Store. We disagree with this outcome and plan to appeal.
Yeah. I object, sir.
It's grumpy.
Even though that's been one of my biggest complaints about Apple and why I side so heavily against them on so many of this, that you can't convince me that they are bringing new customers to Amazon Kindle books. They are not bringing new people to Spotify. They deserve something for developing the platform. But however, I keep looking for a rational explanation from Apple about, if I want to buy a comic book, why do you deserve a huge cut of that sale? And not finding any answer that really makes sense to me. So this is a really positive thing. I mean, time will tell what the end result is going to be for the user experience, but I find it hard not to be very happy about this. And I will simply end by saying that, and Apple also gets to say, hey, if we're removing stuff from the EU, isn't that like a divorced parent saying, sorry, kids, I wanted to buy you the brand new Xbox, but your mother said you can't have it. So,
well, and I think that the issue is also, I do think that we have to remember a little bit of Apple's past, whether we remember it or not. I guarantee everyone at Apple does that's running the company is no one forgets 1997. Like they're at Apple, like it is something they think about all the time, and their services are slowly building up to a larger and larger percentage of the company. And that is a survival mechanism for Apple. That is if the iPhone doesn't work out, or if the tariffs become too hard or everything else, there's this other thing that doesn't require those things. And so when you're pushing against Apple's service fees and what they're doing, to them, I think it's an existential threat. Like they are looking at it. It's fine to say that they shouldn't have to worry about it because they have all those hardware sales, but we don't know how long those hardware sales will last. And so I think that they look at it as an existential threat, because if they give an inch, they're going to have to give a mile. And so what they're going to do is they're going to fight every inch. And if it was my company, I would fight even harder. So I would drag my feet. I would be calling Trump every day, going, "How about we do 300% on wine until they get rid of the DMA?"
I don't think you would fight harder, because I think they are fighting at 100%. I think you're absolutely right. And my counter argument would just be that they might have been able to mitigate. If this is inevitable, they might have been able. Maybe. If they win, it's different. But if it's inevitable, they might have been able to mitigate it by treating it differently. I wanted to throw out, though, I think that story that we started with here, which is features not coming to the EU that are in the 26 operating systems. Like, that's the one that really gets me in a way where I agree with Apple. Like, the idea that if Apple wants to roll out iPhone mirroring or live activities in the menu bar or who knows what else, the implication is if Apple wants to add new features to macOS that integrate with iOS, since iOS is a gatekeeper platform, that either, based on their interpretation, it's not just a gimmick. They believe that either they'll be fined or they'll be forced to build those features either for Windows or for Android and open those features up instead of just doing a nice feature that's synergy with their phones. And like, you can make the arguments that the EU would make, which is like, oh, you should play fair. But if I'm Apple and I look at that, I think they're well within their rights, and I think it's not unreasonable to say, no, we built the feature we wanted to build for our products. You're not going to legislate us to force us to build it for other products, so we're just going to leave it out.
Especially when you're 14% of our market. Like at some point, the EU doesn't make sense for Apple. And so if they cause enough trouble, at 14%, they're 14% of Apple's market. It's like they can
just leave features out.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's part of what makes this such a complicated argument. That, like, for instance, you're absolutely right. It's one of the benefits you get from Apple is the Apple ecosystem is that things work so well together. They are so intimate in how they work together, and it would be in so many cases, it would be prohibitively difficult to make that feature to put your Android phone on your Mac desktop. However, there's also the idea of, okay, but why are you absolutely locking out every other smartwatch,
right,
pretty much from the operating system, where no, you can't get notifications, no, you can't get actionable stuff, no, you can't get access to biometrics, all the sort of stuff that basically says you're stuck at Pebble Watch circa 2014, 2015, even if you have the fanciest $500 Samsung watch. It's difficult.
But it's not Apple's job to make that. Like, it's not their job. You can't, government, this is the distortion of all these regulations, is we're now going to make all these companies write things for us, as opposed to the company. And again, if Apple had, I think that the argument would be completely different if Apple had 90% of the market. If Apple had 90% of the market, I would say you can make them do whatever you want them to do. Even 75% of the market, you can make Apple do whatever you want. I think the problem is that Apple is at less than 50% of the about 50% of the United States, and far less than 50% of the world. And so the thing is, they are not a monopoly. They are one of the phone companies, one of the phone providers. There's all kinds of other people manufacturing phones. If people don't like it, they can go somewhere else. And again, if they got to 75 or 80%, I think that all of the things we're talking about are valid. But at 50%, I don't think so.
The EU disagrees with you because they've defined it this way. I know you two don't get along that much, but here's what I would say, because I agree with both of you in a weird way. And here's the difference. The watch thing that Andy mentions, iOS is closed. There's no way for anybody else to build that connection in the same way that Apple has. macOS is open, and this would be my argument if I was Apple at the EU, which is Google or anybody is free to write Mac software that enables Android screen sharing and puts things in the menu bar and puts out notifications. But we're not going to write it. You're not going to make us write it. If it's impossible to do that on Windows, to do screen sharing with an iPhone on Windows, maybe there's an argument there that's like, you need to allow Microsoft to write software that will show your phone screen on, and give them access to iOS in that way. But in my mind, the difference is not should you be forced to do it as Apple. The difference is, can anybody else interoperate with your devices? And if it's impossible, then in the long run, that's probably an issue. But some of these things that they're asking are literally, if we boil it down, some of them are, don't launch a new feature unless you've built compatibility for the universe on day one. And that is too much to ask, I think.
And I think that I do think that something's interesting that is kind of going under the radar is as you watch how Apple's handling private IPs and, hide my email and all those other things, you are slowly watching them build an infrastructure in which a person doesn't have to be in a certain place. This will mean that, hey, if you register eventually, this could mean, hey, if you register that you're in the EU, you don't get any of this stuff. But if you say, I'm willing to, this phone is going to not be in the EU, even though I live in Luxembourg, and I can hide where I'm from and I can hide all the other bits and pieces, you won't get any of those app stores, but you won't get any.
Like that, though.
No, I know the EU doesn't like it, but the thing is that Apple's building that all into you see all these private IP things that they're adding. That's what eventually it's capable of doing, is basically saying a person doesn't have to declare where they are in the world. And if they want to live by US rules, they can just live by US rules. And so I think that I think Apple has been playing this, they're slowing it down, but I don't think that they're ignoring the fundamental fact that a lot of the stuff may go through, but they're building a bunch of ways that Apple users can work around it. I think that that's kind of as you start to look at why do those bricks make sense? They make sense if you want to get around all of these things.
Well, if you're in the EU, you have our deepest sympathies.
I love it. Leo, here's a pro host move. Throw out the EU as a topic and then go eat some lunch.
Yeah, how'd you know I was doing that?
Well, because I can see you even when you're not on camera. And it's like I got it. You disappeared, and I'm like, oh yeah, you threw us a bone, and then we are.
I figured you guys could handle it. I didn't need to interject
well done.
in any way.
That is why you are the king, right there. That's it.
Exactly. Germany, speaking of the EU, has asked Apple and Google to pull DeepSeek from the app stores. Probably because it's the Chinese AI, right?
Yeah, that's exactly the reason why.
Yeah. Do they have TikTok in Germany? I wonder. I bet they do.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
It's tough. Well, it's tough. There are going to be more and more problems that Apple has to deal with, where as apps become more and more politicized, to have individual regimes across the world decide that for national security reasons, we need you to remove this app. It doesn't matter what our reasons are. We are telling you to do that. You have to do that. And then when Apple gets asked to do something that is legitimately a very, very weird request for them to comply with, Apple is always going to be forced to think, what is the political blowback? What is the commercial blowback? And what is going to be the PR blowback of complying with this or resisting this? And we're going to see this in the United States as well as much as any other country.
Apple has not responded to Reuters about what they're going to do with this request. They haven't responded yet, nor has Google. So
if Germany were to make that app illegal within Germany, that gives Apple like a clear, our hands are tied.
Yeah, they need cover. Brazil, let's come back across the Atlantic, ladies and gentlemen, wants a piece of the App Store anti-competition fines that Apple's facing worldwide. They're looking over there at EU saying, that's a nice packet of change you got there. So now the Brazilian regulator, Conselho Administrativo de Defensa Econômica, CADE, has opened an investigation. Actually, they opened it a couple of years ago. They said Apple's conduct constitutes an infringement of the economic order. Wow. This is particularly over restrictive practices over third-party marketings. You know, it's the anti-steering stuff Apple is, in trouble for in the EU. The new recommendation follows a series of moves by Brazil to fine Apple. So I'm not sure how much they're asking for. They haven't said. Apple responded in a statement repeating that CADE's proposed measures for preventing anti-steering would pose, guess what? Just take a wild guess. Privacy and security risks for users. We will continue to discuss this with CADE, they say. Apparently, they have to take it to court if they're going to pursue a fine in Brazil. I'll tell you what, let's do a little break, and then it's the Vision Pro segment. I am told there are many things to talk about, at least more than one. Our Vision Pro gurus will join us in just a bit. Jason Snell and Alex Lindsay, Andy Anako, and I, we will have lunch this time. Our show today brought to you by ZocDoc. Hey, you remember that doctor's appointment you were supposed to make a while ago? You remember that? The one you meant to book and completely forgot about till now? You know that one? Oh, how about the dentist appointment? You're supposed to go in there twice a year, that biannual cleaning. Your annual checkup, how long has it been? 3 years for the annual? Or the dermatologist visit? We as you get older, we got to keep that mole that you keep meaning to get looked at. You got to go. That rash you diagnosed by Googling it, but you still don't really know what's going on. Why not book a doc today? Because I've got a way to do it easy. ZocDoc. ZocDoc makes it easy to find the right doctor right now. It's all online. In fact, in many cases, you'll be able to book an appointment before the end of this ad read. Oh, don't rush. Don't rush. It's okay. But do it today. ZocDoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare high-quality in-network doctors and click to instantly book an appointment. I'm talking with ZocDoc in-network appointments. More than 100,000 doctors, not just MDs, but every specialty from mental health to dental health, primary care to urgent care, and more. You can filter for doctors who take your insurance or are located nearby who are a good fit for any medical need you have. And this is the thing I love the most. I use ZocDoc for both my parents because they're getting on, and I needed a gerontologist, a specialist in aging adults. And in different parts of the country, ZocDoc was so great. With it's amazing. And the thing I like the best is the hundreds of patient reviews, verified patient reviews, where you can find the type of care and support you're looking for, whether it's a perfect bedside manner or somebody who's like data, just, very focused on just the facts. Everybody wants something different. Everyone wants something different. Some people want fast, short wait times. Sometimes they want doctors with good listening skills. Those reviews will tell you exactly what you're going to get. And once you find the right doctor, you could see their actual appointment openings. You could choose a time slot that works for you. You click, boom, instantly, boom, you got a visit. Appointments made with ZocDoc happen fast, too, by the way, typically within 24 to 72 hours of booking. That rash ain't getting any better. Maybe you want to do that right now. More often than not, you can even get same-day appointments. You ever think of that? I use this, and you should, too. Stop putting off those doctor's appointments and go to ZocDoc.com/MacBreak to find and instantly book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. ZocDoc.com/MacBreak. All right, time for the Vision Pro segment. Actually, we're going to...
What do you know? It's time to talk the Vision Pro.
We're going to merge the Vision Pro jingle with our court docket jingle, which we don't have. But if we did, senior Vision Pro engineer allegedly took a massive volume of secret plans to snap.
Oops.
Snap. D. Liu said, I'm leaving Apple because of health reasons. But what he did instead was he went over to Snapchat as a developer in what Apple calls a substantially similar role. He wanted to spend more time with his family. Well, maybe his family's a Snapchat.
I don't know.
Signing bonus.
He can with the loan. Yeah, with a load of cash, he's going to be able to.
Yeah, he stole a massive, according to Apple, which is suing, he stole a, quote, massive volume of trade secrets. Quote, because Mr. Liu did not inform Apple he was departing to work on another company's product, Mr. Liu was permitted to stay on at Apple for the standard 2-week departure period rather than immediately losing access to Apple's proprietary information. 3 days before he walked out the door, Apple alleges he used his company credentials to download thousands of Apple documents. That's so dumb. Containing trade secrets.
Yeah.
Super dumb.
Putting them on his personal cloud storage.
I think he's
nobody will ever notice this.
Yeah, he's gonna be known as the guy who ruined it for everybody. Like that's what I mean. Like hi, I'm gonna be leaving in 2 weeks, and then suddenly slam, you get duck walked. You're picked up by the collar and just thrown out.
That's why they do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But even let's be honest. If you know that you're going to give notice tomorrow, you download the documents today.
That would be smarter, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Or you don't
smarter
download
would
them,
not
you just memorize them.
Because when you quit, they're gonna look at your access anyway. Come on, and if they didn't before, they will now. They're like, oh, we quit and shut off access. Oh, but he downloaded 1,000 documents yesterday.
Yeah.
Just
you shouldn't do
don't commit
Right.
this kind of act. That's the answer here.
You think that his new employer basically was, oh no, we want what we want is that brain inside that incredible
we
brain
want
you got. And we don't want any.
Yes.
Then late side. Actually, you know what? Before we give you that signing bonus, if you could bring, let's just call it 2,500 documents in.
Well, and the question is,
awesome.
it also could be that he took them all just to make sure that he kept on having the brain. You download them all and you go, oh, I thought of something last night. And
he's got the most amazing notebook LM doc.
It's like yesterday. It's like yesterday with the Beatles. I thought of another song,
That is such a good movie. I love that movie. Especially when he meets John Lennon, who never became a star, and he's had a good life, and he lived a ripe old age.
His version of the Long and Winding Road I like better than the Beatles version of Long and Winding Road. It's much more moody.
The D wall of sound version or the released version with the wall of sound, because they did Let It Be Naked.
Let It Be
That's
Naked.
true. Phil
That is
Spector
good.
ruined Let It Be. He did.
Yeah, I don't know. I know the one that because I was like, what did that? I don't remember that song being like that. And I listened. It's whatever Apple Music handed me when I said that, when I put that in.
If you have not seen this movie, the premise of it is this guy gets bonked on the head and suddenly wakes up in a world where the Beatles never existed.
Yeah.
But he remembers all the songs. So he starts writing. And
he's a musician, and so he's
got a guitar, and it's directed by Danny Boyle. Richard Curtis wrote it. It's really good. I like it. I love that movie.
I love the movie.
My favorite, I think one of my favorite scenes is he's on a talk show. The guy says, I just love your music. Could you just write one today? right in front of us. And the guy says, well, all right, let me think. Yesterday, all my troubles. And it's like, okay. Yeah. Wouldn't that be cool if you could?
Yeah, wouldn't it be the parallel universe? That's the classic. Stephen King wrote a story at some point where like a character gets a Kindle and it turns out that it has access to Amazon in a parallel universe. Ooh. And so it's got all these books that were never written or by people who died, but then they later wrote these books, and it's just such a fun exercise to think about that. Like, what if things were just a little bit different? And there was in fact, there's one of my favorite bits is in the TV show Counterpart, which is a classic, one of the best shows of the last decade. Find it somewhere. I don't even know where it is these days, but 2 seasons, 20 episodes. It's great. It's about 2 parallel universes that are connected together by a tunnel in Berlin. And somebody gets pulled aside for trying to smuggle something from one side to the other. And it's the new Prince album. It's like, that's so rough. That's so rough. He's fine over there. He's still making music over there.
That's frustrating.
Yeah. So anyway, yesterday is a good one. What were we talking about again? Don't download
before we go
secrets.
on, I do have to a dissenting opinion from the YouTube chat. My friend Norman Maslov, who is a Beatleologist and has Beatle lunchboxes, Beatle wigs. He's a Beatle guy. Says Phil Spector saved "Let It Be."
I don't know about that.
Nope.
I don't know about that.
Beatles didn't think so.
I would counter with that. There's a YouTube video going around of Brian Wilson sitting down with George Martin, the Beatles producer, and it's from like a special from like the 90s or something. It's just like standard def captured off of broadcast TV. But George Martin, they sit down at a mixing board with pet sounds, with God Only Knows, and George Martin starts mixing it in front of Brian Wilson, and Brian Wilson says, "Oh my God, that sounds so much better than the version we did." And George Martin goes, "Ha ha ha! Oh, Brian, that's very silly." It's like, it's totally true, because he took the wall of sound out of it and made the Beatles version of it instead. So
George. I wish I'd have to look for that.
Yeah, it's really brief, but you hear just a glimpse of it, and you're like, oh God, that was. And if you like the wall of sound, you like the wall of sound. Again, don't download trade secrets. That's what we're really saying here.
What we're saying here, especially not around the headset.
Don't download trade secrets.
It's one thing to leave knowing what you know. That's pretty clean. You're smarter because you worked at that company.
That's right.
Why
you
they
have freedom of
you.
movement.
That's all good.
Are crappy. Yeah.
Start sharing non-disclosure stuff once you left. That's a gray area. Most people
documents, right?
But documents, that is like,
oh, you're screwed.
You've crossed.
Dude, you're going to jail.
The Rubicon.
Yeah.
So,
Apple sent out surveys. Did you guys get one of these to Vision Pro users? Asking him about the Meta Ray-Bans. Did you get one, Jason?
I did not.
I think I did, and I just kind of ignored it. Like, I was like,
you could have had a scoop, man.
Yeah, I think that
you need a nose for news, Mr. Lindsay.
The problem is you get so much mail, and you look at it and go, "Is that real?"
I know,
and then you just keep going, like, "Oh, I don't have time for that right now."
Last month when I got the email from Audible saying, "Hey, we're going to cancel your account in 2 weeks, but if you want a free year of Audible, we'll give it to you."
I mean, there's so much spam now. And so
went in my spam, and then what didn't go in my spam is the email from Audible saying your account has been canceled. And so I called them up. I said, "Hey, what about that free year?" They said, "No, that offer's expired." You had till May 31st, dude.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so much phishing and spam that I just kind of ignore
this
everything.
Is how you decided to communicate? Email, really?
Yeah, exactly. So
anyway, Apple is apparently, it's kind of like a focus group. Most of the survey asked for feedback on screen resolution of the Vision Pro, fit, and other factors. They asked about guest mode, whether the iPhone app is useful, what accessories you're using.
I need to use the iPhone app for it. I find guest mode is one of the hardest things for me to put.
See, I think you should get in there and answer that survey.
Yeah.
But then users would ask if they owned a MetaQuest 3, MetaQuest Pro. I used to have one. MetaQuest headsets, PlayStation VR, Valve Index, or ByteDance Pro, Meta Ray-Ban, Amazon Echo frames, and the Snapchat spectacles.
I have almost all of those.
I have 2 out of the 3.
I probably would have been. I probably should have filled out the form because I have.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Apple wants to know.
Look, yeah.
So the question is, why is Apple asking this? Ming-Chi Kuo says it's because Apple is planning to release its first smart glasses in 2027. Mark Gurman says it's going to be in 2026.
Yeah, it's this is so Ming-Chi Kuo basically laid out the roadmap. He said they're going to do a rev of the Vision Pro that has an M5 in it instead of an M2. That may just be expediency's sake. They may not be making a lot of M2s, but that they're following that up with 2 products, which are, I mean, I know this, we've talked about it a lot, the 2 no-brainers, which is, say it with me, everybody, cheaper and lighter. Those are the things. And so they want to do a high-end version like this that's cheaper and lighter, and they also want to do a kind of decontented version that maybe has a little bit lower specs, but can be even more cheap and even more light, and that those are their next steps there. And then at the same time, they're working on a couple of equivalents to Meta Ray-Bans, one of which has support for, again, Siri, which is another part of this that they've got to get right, but also some hand gesture stuff that they'll be able to do with the cameras. And then that's step 1. And then step 2 following that is to do the other part, which is have a little screen projection thing so you can start doing that. Feels real late to me. This is one of those cases where I think they poo-pooed probably the Snap product and said, "Oh, that's silly," and then Meta did it better, and they missed the boat, which is a shame because they literally have all the tech to build this product today, and they just got distracted. I don't know.
And not only that, but we've seen how good they can be with designing like personal style wear with the Apple Watch. And you hear about Google announced was it last month, about how they've entered into exclusive deals with like some really top end eyewear design firms. Ray-Ban Meta has also announced deals like that. Apple could definitely do that sort of stuff in house. I mean, we've already seen them quote design eyewear because of on the Vision Pro, how they basically you pick a pair of synthetic eyeglasses to wear for your avatar. So this is absolutely within their wheelhouse. The people remember that Apple's a company that convinced the entire world to say, "How about you stick these 2 popsicle sticks in your ears visibly and walk around and I feel good about myself." I'm wearing
that tech is so good, and it's largely that tech that would be in the glasses. Like AirPods are so good, and then so I mean, I hope it's next year and not 2 years like Ming-Chi Kuo says, because
I think it's
really
2 years.
it should be now, because that, you know, other than the Siri limitation, but I like that they're working on that, and you can see if it's got gesture support in it, like that's stuff that they've learned in building Vision Pro, and I think their goal here is to converge those products eventually, but that's going to take another who knows how many years.
I think Apple just needs to focus on one thing at a time. They're just not very good at this like I'm going to put out 6 products. You know, I think the Vision Pro, it lets them figure out a lot of things, and they'll get to where they're going. Oftentimes Apple starts a little behind and then ends up somewhere in the front.
I think saying, because I think it's 2 different groups, right? I think people building Vision Pro are doing that. This other product feels like an AirPod to me. It's like more like AirPods, and then you go down that path, and eventually they share knowledge and they build from there. But I like that they're working on both of these. You know, what we've been saying all along in the Vision Pro segment is the whole point of the Vision Pro is not now, it's the future. And as long as they keep kind of driving forward, like the OS is improving and is pretty good, but it keeps getting better. And then on the hardware side, you know, they just need to relentlessly push forward to get it to be cheaper and lighter, because those are the 2 things that really kind of kill it as a product, and have more content for it. But if more people could buy it, that would take care of that part.
I just feel as though with smart glasses, that's a case of Apple leading leaving money on the table if they don't make that product. Because that's like, again, big bag of money right there.
I have
Apple.
so many tech nerd friends who don't like Meta and have switched to those Ray-Bans
100%.
because of the context of it. As inconvenient as it is for so many things, they really like having that experience over wearing AirPods in certain circumstances. It's like, it's just another option, right? It's kind of like AirPods. It's kind of different. It makes sense as another sort of wearable iPhone accessory, essentially. So I think they would kill it. That's the shame of it, is that I think AirPods are so good, and I think some of their other tech is so good that I think I would much rather see them make that product than have it be out there with Meta, because then you're meshed in Meta's ecosystem, and I think Apple could make a great job.
Yep,
I think they have to figure out where does that content go and who watches it and how do they watch it? You know, if you're shooting with it. And I think that you get back into, like, when I had lunch with somebody it took me halfway through lunch to realize they were wearing the Meta glasses. I just wasn't paying much attention. We were just talking, and then I was super weirded out by they hadn't turned it on. Or they told me they hadn't turned it on, but super weirded out by the entire lunch that I had with someone with those glasses on. And I was like, and I think that's the thing that Apple still has to figure out with these when you have cameras in the glasses, and and I still have the original of that right here, like still still got it. Yeah. And
he's holding up his Google Glass.
Yeah. The problem you got into is that
is that like 15 years old now? I mean, that's like,
it is. It's probably
kind of
like 13 years old, I think.
Was it 2011? When did it come out? 2011?
2012, June.
2012.
I know, because I worked on some stuff there.
Yeah.
So anyway, but it was, I think that the problem with that camera is just that it kind of weirds people out. And I know people will get thicker skin, but I had Google Glass, and I'm still weirded out by it. Like, I don't want to have any conversations with you. I don't want to do those things around that. I don't want to, there's 1,000 ways you can record, but there's something about your glasses surreptitiously, I can't say it right now. But having that there really bugs me, and I think that's the issue.
I think that's one of the many reasons why I'm looking forward to Apple trying this, because that they're aware of that. And remember, the very first iSight camera, it actually had a built-in privacy iris on it. That was well before anybody was even considering the idea of keeping
the light on the for a long time, the light on the MacBook Pro, it was wired. You could not power the sensor without turning the light on.
All of those are hardwired after a while. Yeah.
I know we already talked about MotoGP and the blackmagic Ursa, but YM Cinema Magazine, I thank you, Andy, for this link, has an entire article about how the Ursa Cine Immersive has been used to shoot the MotoGP with pictures.
Oh yeah, look at that.
So the
Canal Plus offensive continues.
Yes. By the way, thank you for saying it right. I thought it was plus, like the French word, but I was informed, no, it is plus. Jason was right. So
Canal. I called it Canal Plus a bunch of times, and somebody said it's
plus.
Canal Plus.
Plus.
Like, all right, fine.
But it's
fine.
weird because plus is an English word with the S.
If it needs an umlaut, put an umlaut on it. We like seeing it.
The French only accents in French, Andy. How dare you with your German umlauts? Keep that across the border. Alex, you're totally getting one of these soon, aren't you?
I sure hope so. So, I hope I have one. You'll know, because
I'm optimistic about it. Yeah. Oh man, I can't wait.
I'm going to go crazy. Like if I can get a hold of one.
Alex, I keep imagining.
You and I will talk. We'll shoot some stuff.
Are you gonna get that little green doohickey that they put on the top here? What is that? Is that a level? What is that?
It's probably a level. The levels are really important, because if you're shooting in spherical and you get a little.
The horizon needs to be.
It's funny to watch, because if you do it really slowly, we used to do it with 360 as a joke. We would slowly turn the camera like this, and we put it in the
people
footage.
Tilt.
You see people's head go like this.
Yeah, they tilt.
And what's really funny is if you're on a steady cam and you turn it 90 degrees really quickly, they'll take their headset off. It's just like immediately like whoa,
throw it across.
the room. It's too much. But you can get people to tilt their heads back and forth, and you can get people to do all kinds of things. So the level is really important, because you got to make sure that it is. That's why on your spatial camera, on your phone, if you're using a 15 or above, you got to keep it'll. As soon as you get a little out of level, it'll go, hey, you gotta come back here. So definitely makes a difference.
I keep imagining you, Alex. Like, remember the movie The Box? Like, imagine like a mysterious gentleman coming up, knocking on your door with this mahogany box with a big red button on it, saying that, Alex, if you push this button, you will receive this camera immediately instead of having to wait 3 months. However, someone you do not know who has an equal or greater need for it will never receive it.
I'll be like, click.
Yeah, exactly. Clamp.
Click.
So Canalys. Oh wait, but that's the Vision Pro segment.
Now you see, now you know, we're done talking the Vision Pro.
And I just wanted you to know this whole time, Alex, I've been wearing the Meta Ray-Ban glasses.
Oh, man.
Without your knowledge. Surreptitiously. Yeah. Mr. Surreptitious.
Ray did not want to say that word.
Alex, you're saying it like maple syrup. I think that might be the problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Surreptitiously. How about sneakily?
Sneakily.
Anyway, there's, by the way, I don't want to say anything, Alex, but the next time we mention the Ursa, do not take the surreptitious look to the left that you did. It's making people a little suspicious.
Don't have it.
Just a little suspicious. Like, what's he looking at over there?
You'll know, because the very first day that I have it, there's going to be Instagram pictures. There's going to be little streams. There's going to be like a box opening, and there won't be any.
No hiding.
No hiding.
You could be NDA'd though. I guess they're not doing that anymore. It's out, right?
Yeah.
It's not helping. You're not making people less suspicious. I'm just saying.
No, you could have both. So anyway, yeah. But I think that if I eventually get a hold of the camera, obviously there'll be lots of videos. So I'm pretty excited about it.
Look forward to it.
I've been waiting for this camera for about 20 years.
I know.
This is the pipeline. So I'm super excited about it.
Yay! So Canalys, which is a market research firm, says that Macintosh shipments in the first quarter of the year, January, February, March, grew faster than any other PC brand, a year-on-year growth of almost 29%. That is remarkable. Canalys, I guess, they call around, they do the footwork because Apple won't say.
Well, we have to remember that the Mac sales are a very small percentage of the overall market. So when they say it grew, it's like it grew from
that's a good point.
A little bit
it's
more.
It's not absolute volume. It's just the percentage growth. Okay, good.
Percentage growth was great.
But
Apple has been
a big.
Yeah.
But that's a little.
Go ahead, Andy.
Go ahead. Okay, I'll take it. But it's interesting. It's interesting in context of like a couple weeks ago. This week there was people noticed some language in Microsoft talking about the Windows business that implied that they've got their general PR boilerplate is Windows is the operating system of choice, powering over 1.4 billion desktops all worldwide, and now they're saying Windows is the desk of choice. It's powering over 1 billion desktops worldwide, implying that they've lost 400 million users, possibly due to attrition to mobile devices and Linux and Mac.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised because there is some negative stuff about Microsoft Windows
I would say so,
lately.
Yes. I would say so.
If you think ads are bad on your Apple Wallet.
Whatever Apple's Mac market share is, and think about the iPhone market share in a particular region, that difference is an opportunity for Apple to get people to buy Macs. It is it's not just they work better with iPhones, which the EU doesn't like, but it's also just the brand halo of people who try an Apple product and they like it are more inclined to buy another product from Apple because it's familiar, because they know the company, because they're going to the store, whatever it is. There's a huge opportunity there for the Mac. And there has been, I think the Mac has largely outpaced PC sales for like a decade now. And it's not a huge thing, but like for those of us who
PC sales
remember
have been laggard. That's part of the reason, right?
Yeah. And Mac sales have been good for the last 5 years. Yeah. And those of us who remember the darkest days when Mac market share was super tiny, and it's not all about market share, but it was super tiny. It's grown a lot. Like the Mac is bigger than it's ever been essentially at that point. It doesn't mean that there isn't room for growth. Like it's probably Apple's product with the biggest room for growth. that's not a brand new product that might come out of the gate. I mean, there's a lot of room there for the Mac to keep growing.
And
because,
I think we're just seeing the M4 or the M series really maturing into something that, I mean, the M4 Mini is an incredible box. Like, I don't know what, it's probably the nicest desktop machine, for pound that I've ever had. I have a lot of machines, but it's an incredible little box. It's not that can do everything, but for $600, I just can't believe what it produces. So,
hey, reverting quickly to the Vision Pro segment, Mavs guy 842 in our club, Matt, was in Paris, and he took these pictures for you, Alex, of an Ursa in the wild.
Yeah.
They said they were doing some tests for the Vision Pro.
nice.
I don't see the green bubble level on it, but
it's extra. It doesn't come with the camera. You have to
Hey, Leo, you know what would make Mac sales go even better?
What
if there was a low-cost Mac laptop based on an iPhone processor?
That's a really good rumor. Thank you for bringing that up, Mr. Jason Snell.
What if?
This is Ming-Chi Kuo at work again. He says there will be a laptop with an A-series processor in it.
Yeah, really interesting story.
How much are you sacrificing if you put an iPhone processor in it? Not that much.
They've been putting iPhone processors in a lot of places. So here's my short version of my theory, which is Apple. I think with Apple Silicon, it's so good that Apple realizes that their base model. Look, the M4 MacBook Air is amazing. For $999, what you get is amazing. And I wonder if Apple's like, wow, the $999 Air used to be the worst computer we were willing to build. And now we could build something worse than this. I mean, lower the bar. I'm not trying to say lower the bar or make it worse, but like our quality standard goes to here at $999. And then they look at like the speed of their iPhone processors and how good that $999 Air is. And they say, we could probably make a computer that was up to our quality standards for way less than this. And maybe we should do that. And it sounds
like what, $500-$600?
I mean, who knows? Or for $999 when all the prices go up. Who knows, right? I mean, who knows?
Could be a response to tariffs.
Also, if this is on an older chip node, it's a product that they could possibly make the processor in America and maybe even do a little made in the USA build.
It's the solid gold Trump MacBook
maybe,
Air.
But like, so Quo says it may happen with those A16 Pro, and which is in the iPhone Pro right now.
Ming-Chi Kuo says it'll be an A18 Pro.
Or A18 Pro, I mean.
That's what's in the 16.
Are they all 26s now?
Yeah.
And that's really interesting.
13-inch screen, ending mass production at the end of this year, early next year.
Yeah, maybe colorful. And the question is it a low-end MacBook Air or is it just a MacBook? It's not the 12-inch MacBook. This would be a 13-inch MacBook. But like, sorry, I'm talking about this a lot, but I think it's really interesting and exciting. I'll just throw out one other data point, which is Apple keeps selling the M1 Air at Walmart for $699. And eventually they got to stop selling that computer because it's 5 years old. But I think it's telling
they want
that the
price
M1
point.
Air is good enough to sell today because it's so good. And I would bet that the A18 Pro is better, right?
Yeah.
So really interesting of like, they don't need to stop at a $999 Air. There is room below it for a very good computer for people who don't do super nerdy stuff like the rest of us. Like there really is.
It doesn't need all the IO of
doesn't need Thunderbolt processor. Probably. Yeah.
I mean, there's definitely an opportunity here for Apple to, I think they look at Chromebooks, they look at all these other things that are sitting down below, and Apple has a history of, we take a high ground and then we slowly start filling in all the way down. And I think that them getting, to your point, down to a new $699 is a great solution. There are so many people that I know that have Airs that could easily do everything they're doing on an iPad right now, or less.
And it would be compelling, even competing against the Chromebooks, which are now in the $600 to $700 range.
Right.
And if they were able to get to $499 for schools or something like that, it starts to get into a much more interesting place.
If Ming-Chi Kuo is correct about ramping up for end of this year to announce it early next year. That's in time for the fall 2026 buying season for education.
Yeah.
And I think we can conclusively say that Apple has lost the bid to get all school systems to switch to iPads from whatever they're using now. I also don't think that they're going to have a whole lot of success in convincing schools to spend $500 per seat, $600, $700 per seat, as opposed to a $300 Chromebook, $200, $50 Chromebook. That's going to satisfy the legal requirements that they've got state by state for education. However, the idea of creating new seats for kids, I'm saying, guess what, kid? You can get your own MacBook right now. $1,000 was no, we're not buying you $1,000 notebook. That's definitely that's nudging the edge of premium notebook, but high-end medium-range notebook, yeah, we'll give it to you for $600 or $700. That's great.
There's some parts of the education market that do spend more money and are not like that. I mean, and Apple, that's where Apple still is. And so I think that they're never going to like blow out Chromebooks, but they could have a maybe more effective argument for those who would rather not go that route. And yeah, this is all, just to bring it back for a moment to Apple Silicon, like this is all based on Apple Silicon, that Apple Silicon transition has been so successful in so many ways, but one way we may not have noticed it is just how it's raised the bar. And like to take it back to that M4 MacBook Air, which they now have gotten all the way down with a new look MacBook Air back down to $999 as a starting price. And everybody pretty much agrees, like, it is such a good deal. It is such a no-brainer to say, if you want a Mac, the $999 Air is such a great value. Most people, it's probably enough just on its own that, then you look down and you're like, actually, we could put a little bit cheaper of a processor in something like this and pull some stuff off of it and go below where Apple's been willing to go with a laptop in a long time. That's really interesting and exciting. The pause that they would get is, how many do we cannibalize some MacBook Air sales? But I think if that product is, you're going to pick up more from people who would otherwise not buy one.
Yeah.
If you can get down there.
And the question is will it be just like a MacBook Air? Once you start going down this path, you can say, well, I could make it an iPad that runs Mac OS. so I can have a keyboard or not have a keyboard. I can have it doesn't have to be, it could be a Mac, you could get down there and then you think about the features. I mean, the hard part with Chromebooks as a parent of high school students is that they, Google took the past and poured concrete into it. It's a horrible book for any kind of innovation. Like it just solves old problems badly. And so the thing is that it costs less, and that's great for schools, I guess. But the ability to generate media and to create things. I mean, the other market for this is parents like me who buy their kids hardware to make their job easier at school, because my kids don't really build anything on Chromebooks. They deliver them in Chromebooks because they're required to, but that's not where they build their presentations or they build anything else. They build those on a Mac or on an iPad. And so there's a pretty big market out there for parents who can afford it. It's unfortunate that can afford it, that market is still there. So it's not just the school systems buying these things. It's the parents buying real machines to make up for the crappy ones that the schools are giving them.
Yeah. And just to defend Chromebooks slightly, that kids are going to think, hey, wow, I can make this thing smoke and catch on fire if I stick a paperclip in the USB port. Yay!
Well, but that's also
you want them to do that with a cheap thing that they're going to simply swap out.
But they also
hate stuff, and
they also hate the Chromebooks. The problem was that Google spent a whole bunch of time talking to teachers and talking to administrators about what they wanted, and then built it for them. That's oftentimes not the way to innovate, is ask people about how they've been doing things and figure out how to automate that. It's really figuring out what do they need next and building towards that. And that was the fatal mistake for the Google Classroom, which eventually will be problematic. It made them a lot of money right now, but that's why it holds back an enormous number of things from happening. It's been pretty catastrophic it's why the one-to-one is failing. It's because of Google Classroom.
What you're saying makes sense, but one of the constant problems in bringing technology to education, bringing any sort of change to education, is people, especially tech people, informing teachers on the front lines. Here is what the future is going to be. Here is how we're going to improve your classroom, as opposed to teachers feeling, well, here is what we need. Here's what we are required to deliver, and so it's a good thing that Google started. It's like Apple and Google really came out from different sides. They created an aspirational product. Apple did, whereas Google said, here, what do you need to satisfy your mandates and to be able to teach your curriculum? And what do you need to administrate it? What do you need to be a teacher who's operating a class with everybody on Chromebooks? And they basically delivered what they needed. I don't think it's necessarily a sin to simply say, you're hungry, we're going to feed you a meal right now, as opposed to take your idea about what we want to give you in the future.
Yeah, I think, and I think the fundamental, what killed Apple, in my opinion, was not so much that their product was too far forward thinking. It's that they didn't handle the one thing. To your point, they didn't handle the one thing, which is fleet management. That's what, when the iPad came out, everyone was on board. Everyone wanted to play hard. The price wasn't that big of a deal. But Apple's inability to manage fleets, in the first couple of years, just gave Google this huge opening to just roll in there, because they couldn't manage all the iPads. Trying to install stuff on them it now works, but that, they missed that window. And I think that, I think Apple has a great education team, but I think that the central design of how they build that stuff, they could invest a lot more in it in Cupertino, and they do better, to show people. But I think that it is night and day when you see someone using a lot of the tools that are on an iPad or other things like that they built. It's night and day from a Chromebook. So
I agree. I like the idea of a mix. You have a lab that has like the good stuff, so you can use all the creative tools, but still everybody getting a balanced meal every single day, even if it's not terribly exciting.
I just think it's unfortunate. Again, as a parent that can afford to augment my kids' experience, I feel it's just unfortunate for the kids who can't. That they have something that is pretty much a brick, and you have other students that are able to do much bigger things and much better things than they can, because that baseline is so low.
Could be worse. It could be using Windows.
Zing.
That's true.
You're watching.
You don't see a lot of that in schools anymore. I mean, you see it every once in a while.
It's funny. It's been a while, but when my kids were in high school, I was on the board of the high school, and they had a one-to-one program, which was MacBooks. And when Apple's MacBook price went up, because I think it was $899 at the time, they said, we're going to buy Windows machines, and they did. I don't know what they're doing today, though. I feel bad for any kid that has to. Well,
I feel bad for the person who has to administrate a class school full of Windows machines.
That guy left.
I gave my administration enough problems with an Apple IIe without any network connection, so I can't imagine how bad it is to administrate high school kids who think that they know more than you do, and that they can basically, hey, I installed Linux in a partition on this without telling you.
I had a classmate break into Pittsburgh National Bank with their Apple IIe. From the school.
What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Alex Lindsay, Andy Anako, Jason Snell, sixcolors.com. Thank your co-host. I'm trying to get him on a show, but Sunday's not a good day for him. But Mike Hurley was very kind when Apple did a little retrospective of all the wonderful podcasts over the last 20 years that have made such a difference in podcasting, and left a couple of my favorites out. Mike Hurley very kindly on LinkedIn pointed that out. And so just thank him for me. I appreciate his thoughts and his concern.
He's a new dad, and also 8 hours in front of us, and that makes it kind of hard for him to do.
He can't do a late night show. I understand.
That's why I do a podcast with him on Monday morning, which is not the best time, but it's what we have.
Upgrade podcasts. You could see it at sixcolors.com/Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you. On we go. Apple has, by the way, updated Pixelmator. So Apple bought Pixelmator Pro, which everybody loved. And there was some concern that they might let it languish or perhaps close it down and roll features into Photos. Maybe not. They have just released a new version of Pixelmator Pro, and they have built in Apple Intelligence. Well, They build in writing tools and image playground. I don't know. Is that how intelligent is? Oh, I don't know. What do you think?
It's a place for them to experiment with it, and it'll be interesting to see whether Pixelmator at some point becomes Pixelmator eventually becomes something part of the iWork platform. Like it literally could be something that they released.
They should
eventually that becomes part of that. But that is a shot over Adobe's bow. Because there's a lot of people that if Apple starts putting real money into a real photo editor, I think that they've taken photos about as far as it can go. They've added so many features when it comes to correcting and doing all the other things. There's an incredible amount hidden. And if people haven't used photos, you open up Edit, there is a lot of tools in there that you can really fine tune an enormous number of things in there. But I think they've gone as far as as far as photos will go. And I think that Pixelmator is the next step. We've always wondered whether there was always rumors that Apple had some kind of Photoshop competitor hidden in Apple ever since they had ever since Adobe took so long to make the transition to Intel. There was kind of this internal that's what we had always heard. But this gives Apple the ability to put out a photo editor that complements what they're doing. And right now, Photoshop's really expensive. And I think that. And Affinity now is owned by Canva. So it's a different, so I think it gives Apple the opportunity to have a photo editor and start to add tools. I think these are the early tools that you add, but they could add a lot more, especially when it comes to dimensionality and so on and so forth. It's going to be really interesting.
Also support for RAW from the OM1. Do you still have your OM1, Andy?
Absolutely.
Really nice camera.
I wouldn't be surprised if we see USDZ in the next year. Bring your objects in like you do with Keynote, like you do with in other apps, being able to render them directly into the photos.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out how I use Image Playground. It says you can take one of your photos and use Image Playground on it, but I don't see it.
I don't know if that's the deletion tool that's already in Photos, and I haven't had a chance to try it. So but it could be the deletion stuff inside of Photos is pretty awesome.
You clean up.
The cleanup. I want to get rid of this person. I want to get rid of this thing. I want to get.
It should have been there several years ago because Google's been doing that forever. But it is good. It is a good implementation.
Okay, so basically, what happens is if you're in the program, you can launch Image Playground from it and then modify.
Generate an ugly image,
and then you can you can have dorky photos in Photomator as well as everywhere else.
Well, what's funny is so here's a dorky photo of me. And so you'd think it would just open this insert, but it doesn't open it in Image Playground. So I don't know. Basically, all it did is open Image Playground.
It's just a generator that then outputs it out. It's not that interesting a feature. It's just a standard API call.
And I don't know why you'd want to use writing tools in a photo editor. So, that was nice. Good. I put a lighthouse in there.
Awesome.
Wow. Thank you, Apple.
Yep.
It's a good start.
The power to be your best.
I don't know what I would have done without you.
Baby steps.
It's a separate layer. There's that.
Yeah.
Okay, Apple Intelligence once again just blowing us all away. How do I stop this?
The hard part is, I think, for this, especially do something Photomator, is that the AI tools in Photoshop are stunningly good.
No kidding.
Stunningly good. Like they are so. It is probably the number one reason that I'm still using Photoshop is because I go and clean stuff up so quickly. So
when I bought the Project Indigo, the subscription, I got Lightroom on the iPhone, and many of those features are even in the iPhone and iPad version of Lightroom. So fairly cheap, right?
And just the competition, the ability to simply have to unlearn everything that I've learned about masking and selections. Simply say, "Hi, could you just automatically select the face of the third person from the right?" Okay, here's a selection mask. Anything else I can do for you? No, that's awesome. Thank you for framing the hair so well too. It's Oh,
Apple filed.
Go ahead.
Apple filed a motion to dismiss the government's lawsuit against it, claiming that the DOJ claimed that Apple was unlawfully dominating the U.S. smartphone market. U.S. District Judge Julian Niels in Newark denied Apple's motion to dismiss, the summary dismissal
And summary
so the
dismissal,
trial-
by the way, is like almost never happens.
It's pro forma. You ask
do
for it, the judge.
But,
said
what's
no.
amazing is to see when this court case started and when they've gotten just to the dismissal phase. So if you think about when this is actually going to get decided, it's probably a couple more years.
I just wanted to go. I don't have an opinion about whether Apple is guilty or not guilty about it for antitrust with the DOJ's case. I just want to make it long enough so there's a discovery process that dumps luscious internal Apple documents into the public record again. Isn't it fun? It's like Easter Sunday and seeing this big basket full of green plastic and plastic glass and internal conversations about the future of a product
You'd
line.
think
It's amazing.
that at some point they would just have an Apple cone of silence where they go in and have these conversations, but evidently not. Email seems to be okay.
No, business, got to do business. This is always the real payoff on these court cases, regardless of the outcome, is the discovery is always fascinating. Look at Apple Epic.
Yep.
I think it is safe to say now, with the additional promotion in the Apple Wallet, that Apple's film F1 is a success.
It's great.
The movie cost $250 million to make, but they made $146 million in the opening weekend.
Yeah, I saw a piece about this on Puck News that is among its things is a media insider kind of thing.
Yeah.
Matt Baloney wrote a piece where he said, "Look, if this was a different kind of movie, it would probably be getting barbs for its fairly it's good but not great opening in the US, but it performed well internationally. It's probably going to perform really well over time because of the people who want to see it in IMAX or maybe 70 millimeter and get that full on effect. So it'll probably have legs. And also Apple is playing a different game here. They're going to probably attract a lot of people to Apple TV Plus to watch it there once it drops there. So it's like, we shouldn't go overboard. Like, it's not a blowout hit that's going to make $1 billion probably. Yeah. But given Apple's, I think what Matt Baloney said was, Eddie Q's not going to be able to say we can't do theatrical releases anymore because of what happened with F1. That's not going to happen now. They did a pretty good job, and it seems to have good reviews and a good opening and some legs, and is not. Yeah, it's we shouldn't go nuts about this. Like it's good, and there are a lot of peripherals that make you think this is going to be a pretty good result for Apple.
And I think it might have been the best one from a streamer. I think this might have been, the best performance in the first week from someone that you knew that this was going to end up in the streaming service for free. That is, because that's always been the hard part, is that when you know it's going to come and you're like, why am I paying for it? Why am I going to go see this in the theater? Now, I will say that this is, if you are listening to this, you should see it in the theater. I don't say that very often. I don't go to the theater very often. But this one, unless you're on an Apple Vision Pro, you're not going to see what was shot. Like it's such a big show. And so but I think that Apple had a lot of reasons to push this hard, but I don't think they can put this kind of energy into every film. So I think that the Apple will probably follow the trajectory of, if we see more than, next year, not this year, but next year, if we see more than 6 features coming from Apple, I'd be super surprised. Yeah. And I think, and most of them will just go to streaming, and they'll pick 1 or 2 that they're going to do what they did with F1. But as a PR, I've almost never seen, other than I've almost never seen this kind of PR push for a movie from a tech company.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Wall Street Journal had an article that cites sources that Apple is considering actually developing a distribution arm so they can distribute their own pictures, which, if true, would of course indicate that they're not just simply making stuff for streaming. Jason might have is more into the business side of show business side, but it seems like you're not going to get people like Brad Pitt. They want to be movie stars. They don't want to be streaming stars. And if Apple has the ability to create at least a minor hit, like a summer tentpole release, that means that they get more desirable content for Apple TV Plus than simply middle catalog sort of stuff. That's one of my constant disappointments with movies that are designed for streaming, that they really don't go for gold. Oftentimes, it's like, even if it's from a director you love, you can tell that it's not the script that they're keeping in their hip pocket to make their greatest movie ever about. Yes. It's a good project that they can get some good talent about. They can test out a new process that they don't want to waste on.
it's like the Russo brothers come back to, they come back home and they go, hey, we got a bunch of money. What can we write here? And they'll write it over a shorter period of time. It doesn't go through to your point, I don't think you definitely don't feel like Gray Man was the thing that they always wanted to write, and so I think that you're 100% right that is. And I think that Bruckheimer is probably the perfect person to talk to about that kind of thing, because he's pretty business oriented as far as like, he's not as worried about that. He doesn't have to prove anything at this point. So I think that I do think that Apple getting into its own distribution and potentially even its own theaters could make sense. There's oftentimes, there's a lot less control over distribution owning the theaters at this point. And so being able to have theaters that project the film in the way that you want them to project the film, so that in LA and New York, and Netflix does this. Netflix has a handful of its own theaters, and Amazon has some incredible LED theaters in Culver City. There's some great places, and it's not like they're trying to sell a lot of tickets, but being able to bring the VIPs in for a theatrical release makes a big difference when you're talking to them about the next movies.
It's interesting. F1, only about a third of the first weekend box office was in the U.S. 2/3 of it was international.
That's because F1 is a lot bigger internationally.
It's a lot bigger internationally.
And I think that most people that I talk to that love F1 definitely enjoyed the film. I mean, they nitpicked a lot of things that wouldn't have happened, but they definitely enjoyed it. And I think that this is a big play. I think this is all being bundled into Apple trying to figure out. I think if this movie had been a complete failure in the box office, I don't think Apple bids on F1. I think if Apple makes a lot of money on
then
this goes big. F1. I think Apple says, if we can move the needle in the United States, and more people are talking about F1, maybe we should get broadcasting rights, at least for the US, for F1.
So did you see the studio? Seth Rogen's thing on Apple TV, Matt Baloney, heavily featured in there. So much so that I thought, maybe he'll give him a free ride on Puck News from now on.
He's a plot point in that show.
He is, and they even say his name like 5 times, and even I think spell it at one point because somebody mispronounces it. No, it's Baloney.
Belloni.
It's probably a pet peeve of his that everyone says it wrong. They're like, let's just put it in the script.
Well, it's funny because 2 episodes
otherwise
before...
Otherwise you're Baloney, right? Nobody wants to be Matt Baloney.
I'm Matt Baloney. Maybe that's what happened. 2 episodes before, Ted Sarandos of Netflix was heavily featured, and there was some speculation that it was weird that Tim Cook was not. Apparently,
but the joke doesn't make any sense if it's Tim Cook. It only makes sense if it's Ted Sarandos, because
Anyway, Baloney says Apple has exactly 0 wide theatrical releases planned after F1.
Yeah, they have been very successful doing TV shows, and they have not been successful doing movies. And this will be, I think they make some decisions, like Andy was saying. A lot of mid movies out there. I think the idea of spending a little less money on some nice small movies and then occasionally putting your chips in for something that you think is really legitimately going to be big, but they're just streaming in general. It's not just Apple, has been full of a lot of mid movies that cost too much, are not that good, and are something that's out of the trunk of the writers and the directors and all of that. And like, that's not a business they should be in.
And really where the industry is going right now is if you're not making destination content, there's so much content out there. If you're not making must-see TV, you're competing with YouTube. Like, no one's filling their time with, I'll just go watch a random movie. No one's watching random movies anymore to fill their time. They're watching YouTube to fill their time. And so or some reality show or something like that, but it's not, so the problem is that building something that if you're not going to go all the way, don't bother. I was talking to someone about this recently that there was like, I've talked to a couple people about it, where that distance between the low end and the high end is massive.
Apple does have a lot of stuff on the slate, but none of it's really going to be big theatrical. Spike Lee's Highest to Lowest is coming up, that with Denzel Washington, a smaller romantic comedy, All of You, will debut exclusively on Apple TV in late September. Nothing else dated for 2026, including a movie that's done, John Cena in Matchbox, an adaptation of the Mattel Cars.
Well, and That's interesting. That's funny.
Oh yeah, I can't wait for the Kool-Aid movie.
Yeah, speaking of the
Oh
of the
yeah,
studio,
Mayday, a Ryan Reynolds survivalist thriller, and Peanuts animated film.
A lot of these were most likely greenlit before they made the decision, like, hey, we shouldn't be playing this game anymore. And so they're already in. You got to remember the what's coming out now or this year was in pre-production 3 or 4 years ago, and so it's I think that and you can't tell Ryan Reynolds that you're not going to release his movie, that kind of thing. You might be able to tell John Cena that.
Who's going to call him? Who's going to get Seth Rogen to call him?
Video.
Seth can do it. Fountain of Youth was god awful. The Natalie Portman, John Krasinski movie, which they did not put in the theaters, and it's a good thing.
Well, and putting in the theater is a big commitment. Like, it is so expensive to put things into theaters that you got
to put stuff in Apple Wallet to promote
to get
it,
people to show up. Everything else. I think that again, I think that the F1 has a lot to do with potential broadcast rights and the fact that there was a lot of movement there. And I think that's the. But I don't think that we're going to see very many releases from Apple like that. I think maybe if we see one a year, I'll be impressed. But I think what you're also seeing is the other direction. Murderbot is 22 minutes long,
and it's awesome.
And it's really good, but it's really short. And you know what? That it has the same impact on the revenue. So a 22-minute show, has the same impact.
That's true.
On their
People
revenue
subscribe to watch the show.
10 weeks of
regardless
drops too. 10. It'll binge really well, but it's also for now. It's a 10-week drop, and that means that there's always something new coming on Apple TV every week. And that I was going to mention Murderbot earlier. Like, there's a new model for a lot of stuff. Unless you can do that spectacular thing that Alex is talking about, there are better ways to spend your money. And Apple and the guys who run Apple Studio, who came over from Sony, they have done a good job with their TV stuff. So like, keep it up, and calculating out stuff like Murderbot that is going to drop every week. Murderbot will be an excellent binge because those episodes are so short and they all end on great cliffhangers, and it's funny. And it'll be great like that, but also it's giving them 10 weeks of coverage where there's a new drop every week.
And I think you can see something that's not never ending too. I mean, I think that like Penny Dreadful, which was 3 seasons long on Showtime, is one of the best. Just like, we're going to end it. Like, there's not an open-ended, like, oh, we ran out of things. It was like it had a beginning and an end. But it had you waiting every year for another 6 episodes. Not that I'm bitter. 6. 6.
What else? Any other stories before we get to your picks of the week? Swift is going to start supporting Android app development, which is kind of interesting. The thing is, Swift isn't really just Apple's. It's an open source project as well. So it's not necessarily that Apple is saying, oh, we got to make sure that we develop for Android.
But it's good for like skill portability.
Yeah.
Like how much time if Apple
Apple's not interested in, though. Why would Apple want people to develop for Android?
But they want people to develop using Swift, and that's going to encourage more people to say,
well, they can go the other way.
If I'm going to spend time learning a new language, I want to make sure these skills are going to be portable for not just stuff I'm running for Apple hardware.
You look at the expense of the programmers. It'd be great if there's a lot more of them. So, and they're writing in the platform that you'd prefer them in, as opposed, I mean, like right now you talk about to programmers, what is their favorite platform to write in? A lot of them will say Python. And what is the most documented with the best training and the best support? Python. And so I think that's part of it. Although it'll be really interesting to see, for me, when I write Mac apps now, I don't need to know that. I mean, I just say, I want to write this in Swift, like because I want to, and it doesn't, so that'll be an interesting thing as AI takes over or does a lot more of the basic app development, whether it matters what language you're writing in.
Yeah. Let's take a break, and your picks of the week coming up next. You're watching MacBreak Weekly. Andy Anako, Alex Lindsay, Jason Snell. I hope you enjoy this show, and if you do, I hope you'll consider joining Club Twit. It's how we keep this network on the air. 25% of our operating expenses come from your club membership. It doesn't go into my pocket or Lisa's pocket. It goes into the pockets of all the people who make our shows possible. And you're one of those people making our shows possible. You get ad-free versions of all of our shows, access to our Club Twit Discord, all the special programming we do in the Discord, including Apple keynotes. We do those in the Discord because we don't want to get taken down. other keynotes like Google I/O and Microsoft's keynotes. We also do special programming like last week's music show, which was great, with Mazzy's music from YouTube, and Stephen Witt, who wrote a book about the advent of digital music and iTunes. It was just great. That was on Friday. If you didn't see the live version, you're going to have to wait till it comes out in a month, but Apple Club members can actually watch it on our Twit Plus feed. All of that special content goes out on the Twit Plus feed. $10 a month, $120 a year. Is there still a 2-week trial? I'm not sure. Check.
Oh, yeah.
There is.
Yep.
Twit.tv/ClubTwit. Free 2-week trial. Also memberships plans for businesses and for families. And thanks in advance. It really makes a big difference to us. Twit.tv/ClubTwit. I'm going to make this my pick just because I want to piss people off. How about that? It was one of the stories you were going to do. But there is a new app in the App Store called Ice Block. It's an iPhone app that'll alert you to nearby sightings of Trump's Gestapo, also known as ICE. Interesting. CNN did a piece on it, which caused the administration, Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, to say, we're going to investigate the people who created this app. Okay, Joshua Aaron created it, in case you didn't know, Pam. It is available in your store, and perhaps not a bad idea if you're worried about ICE knocking on your door. Ice Block.
Yeah, that's kind of like what I was thinking about when we were talking about, like, Apple is often going to be confronted with no-win situations where the CNN report came out just last night. The app's been around for a few weeks now, but the CNN report just came out last night. And so the administration is being asked for lots and lots of different reactions. And of course, they're very upset about it. So what happens if Apple gets put under pressure to remove this
that'll be interesting
app?
Yeah.
Again, I do not know what they could, would, or should do, because there is no way you win this scenario without suffering a huge loss.
Yeah. Stay informed about reported ICE sightings within 5 miles of your current location. Look, if you can have, next door neighborhood on your phone, you could warning you about suspicious people of color in your neighborhood. Certainly you can have this. Ice Block. A lot of good reviews.
Yeah.
See something, say something. It is number 1 right now in social networking. Not bad. Probably because of the CNN report yesterday. All right.
Get it before it gets taken down.
Yeah. I mean, ICE isn't going to come after me, but I do have some people working on my house right now. I don't know. Mr. Jason Snell, who has carefully stayed out of that conversation. What's your pick of the week?
I don't know. My pick of the week is it's kind of a twofer. Mac Whisper is a very nice app that's free.
You've recommended this before, right?
Yeah, it does. It transcribes audio and turns it into text, which is very nice. Their pro versions, which costs about $70, added support for the NVIDIA Parakeet model of speech to text, which is exceedingly fast. It's faster even than the new Apple speech to text framework that they're adding in the 26 releases. And so you can do that, or you can somebody has built an MLX version, MLX being basically Apple Silicon version of Parakeet.
I was wondering, because you don't have NVIDIA, so it doesn't require NVIDIA hardware to run.
Yeah, Parakeet? It doesn't. They built a model more recently than Whisper, which is the OpenAI model, and it's out there and it's available. And you can run it on Apple Silicon, and it runs faster. The speed is amazing. It's like 90x or something. It's when I tested it, it was an absolutely ludicrous speed. And I've got the numbers here. So I used Whisper on my, and this is on an M4 Pro MacBook Pro. Whisper was 31x, the original recording. Apple's new thing was 74x, the original recording. And Parakeet, 97x. Ow. 97 times the runtime. So you take an hour and a half audio file and you will get a complete transcript in a minute. And so, yeah, if you're comfortable with GitHub and Python, you can get this running using like pip in Python in your command line.
Oh, so you don't have to use Mac Whisper. It just makes it easy.
What Mac Whisper does is put it in an app with an interface. And they've got a model where if you if you have a podcast audio with both speakers on separate audio tracks, you can put them both in and it like interleaves them and makes something that says who said what that works okay. It's not great. It's okay. But if you just want the pure power of it, you can get that for free by going to the Parakeet MLX project. If you just search for Parakeet MLX, you will find it. And I didn't know about this model until Mac Whisper added it. And wow, it's fast. It's I would say it's also a little bit better than Apple's model in terms of punctuation.
Oh, that's the question. Yeah. How good is the speech recognition?
Yeah, it's a little bit, I think maybe its context window's a little broader, so I think it's a little bit better. It's not as good as the V3 Turbo of Whisper in terms of accuracy, but it's good. And it's a little bit better than Apple's. And the thing there is just the context window, the wider it is, the more it can say, oh, well, that sound that person made in context of everything around it, they must have meant this, right? It allows you to be more accurate by understanding what people are saying, and it does a little bit better job with punctuation, like accurately reflecting. But if you're not comfortable using command line tools to do this, that's the great thing about Mac Whisper is it's just wrapped in an app, and you have to pay for the pro version, but you'll get all of that. But if you don't need that, you can get it straight up from the MLX project that's on GitHub.
And I'm running it on Hugging Face, so you can try it on Hugging Face.
You can, if you want as well. But it is like, again, the 100x almost that's on an M4 Pro, right? So M4 Max. So it's going to be slower than that on other, but like appreciably faster than Whisper. V3 Turbo, which is the higher quality Whisper setting. So it's pretty cool. We're getting finally some forward movement on the whole speech to text thing. If you're generating YouTube captions, if you're generating podcast transcripts, or even just searchable backlog of a podcast, I cranked through a whole bunch of my old podcasts. It's just, it's real fast. And I recommend it. It's cool.
And I've already transcribed your entire review almost in real time. It looks pretty good.
That's also why you're the king. Look at that.
Look at that. Looks pretty good.
Pretty good.
Mac Whisper is fantastic. If you do a lot of transcription, it'd certainly be worth paying for, although you have to pay for the higher level.
Yeah, and if you don't want to pay and you're technical, you can just use command line to do it. Right. Works great. Right.
Or Hugging Face.
I wrote a shortcut that I can click. Using shortcuts. You can right click on a file and say, do this. And like you just kind of do the shell script stuff in there and the command line stuff, and it just does it. So a lot of ways to skin this cat.
Have you used, speaking of shortcuts, the new AI thing that...
Dan Morin and I wrote about that on 6 Colors last week. We both used it for different tasks. I used it to generate a thing where when I'm uploading a file to my website, to 6 Colors, it now uses Apple's private cloud compute to generate the alt text for that image. So I don't have to write alt text. It's not always perfect, but I see it, so I can edit it. But it gives me a starting point that's really, really nice. And then Dan built a system where, like, if he gets an invoice in, it actually like looks at the PDF, figures out what the fee is, adds it to a spreadsheet, and files it in the appropriate folder, which is like, that's pretty awesome. Because again, without the AI step, it's very hard to build a piece of code that will be flexible enough to look at any PDF invoice and figure out what the fee is, right? Like that's super squishy, and that's what AI stuff is good for. So he's using it that way, and it's a good start. Private cloud compute's got some advantages. It would be really nice if you could process images locally, but Apple's local model currently doesn't let you attach an image. So I use private cloud compute, and it works great.
The article is experimenting with Apple's AI models inside shortcuts at 6colors.com by 6 Colors staff.
Yeah, because we haven't set up a joint byline in our WordPress. There's a plugin for that, of course there is, but I have to change my templates. So we just mark it as staff and then have little taglines for my piece and Dan's piece.
You and Dan are staff. Yeah.
We're on the staff.
Andy, and I co-pick of the week.
What an interesting coincidence. A couple of weeks ago, we were talking about digital comic books and how ever since Comixology was bought by bought by Amazon, and now you can't use the Comixology app. You have to use that terrible Kindle app. Oh, isn't that terrible? That exact same day, the two founders of Comixology, apparently they're no compete with Amazon, ended like a few weeks ago because they are launching a brand new digital comics platform called Neon Ichiban, NEONICHIBAN. And it's not open yet, but you can sign up for the wait list at neonichiban.com. And according to what you see on the site, they've got Marvel, they've got DC, they've got like all the major players.
Wow!
And I've known these guys for quite a while, since the launch days of Comixology. They absolutely get comics. So I'm really, really, really keen to see how good this app is, because if it is, I'm not necessarily terribly pleased about having to buy into another DRM platform, but if you can sell me comics in a form that I can actually read with a reader that lets me organize them and access them, and is again built for people who read comics, not for people who were reading books 15 years ago and just simply shoehorned in a comics reader there, okay, they'll get my money. I'd much rather they succeed.
Yeah, the David Steinberger, I'll co-sign this. David Steinberger and Chip Mosher, who did the original Comixology, they did great work. Yeah, then sold it to Amazon and went off and did some other things. They did like a weird NFT comic thing that I did called Distillery. But clearly, like, they were biding their time. But they get it. They get it.
So you guys, which publishers should? So I got DC because I'm a Superman, Batman kind of guy.
I put down Marvel and Image and I don't know, IDW and Boom probably. It doesn't matter. They're just it's a survey.
Question. Yeah,
they're trying to gauge who their audience is there. But like those guys,
they're even
those guys are really good.
That's kind of nice.
That's really cool that they're coming back into this space, because they did a great job with Comixology in the early days.
There shouldn't be a monopoly on an entire art form. It's either Kindle, or you have to know the individual publisher and hope that they actually are selling PDFs or CBZs. I'm glad to see like two. You don't if you want to see the X-Men, you don't necessarily have to absolutely go to Amazon for
as a comic. Now, as a comic collector, I like this. As a creator of stuff, if I was a publisher, I would so hate the stranglehold that Amazon has over the comics, digital distribution of comics. And they've got their own things too, but like to have another storefront to compete with Amazon is a really good thing. Very important.
I completely agree. 100%. All right. That leaves but one, Mr. Alex Lindsay, your pick of the week.
So I'm very fascinated by the whole glucose monitoring, as people have heard, and it's not on the watch. Who knows when it'll come on the watch? But I'm very curious, like how it affects behavior. And so, but you have to get unless you're diabetic, you have to get a prescription to do it, or so I thought.
No, you don't. I have a Dexcom Stello, and I have a watch complication, so I can see my blood sugar at all times.
So I got the Lingo, which is, I don't know, it's about
they're all the
bucks.
same.
About $50 and $50 for 2 weeks. You put it in.
Yeah, this is $100 a month. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I put it on, and I was just curious, like, will this actually affect how I eat? And the answer is 100%. The food industry has no idea what's about to hit them if the Apple Watch hits it, because you see these, you just get curious. You like eat something and then you come back a half an hour later and look at it on the app and you go, ooh, what's going on here? And, and anything that goes over the top bar that they give you is kind of like, well, I'm not gonna eat that again. And so it's an interesting, but if you're interested in doing it and you've been kind of caught up in trying to figure out where to get it. I mean, I just literally bought it on Amazon, plugged it into the back of my, downloaded an app in a second and was getting data, a couple minutes later.
Yeah. I wear one right now.
I was concerned that it would hurt. You can't even feel it.
You just go punk. Yeah,
I was punch. I was waiting. I was kind of like waiting for this is gonna feel
doesn't hurt.
Because when you look at it, it's a big needle.
Yeah.
You go. That's got to feel. It's got to feel like something. It doesn't. I swim in it. I work out in it. I do everything with it on, and it's been really fun. I will say more than anything else, because again, my levels are pretty normal. It's just, I find it to be fascinating to watch how your body's reacting to the food that you're eating.
Yeah, you get a graph and you can see.
Yeah, you see the little
all
graph
that stuff. It's really useful. Yeah.
So anyway, and you do learn very quickly. What's happening for me is that I very quickly tie in, because I'm looking at it after meals. Like I kind of put in what meal I ate, because it'll say, hey, what happened here? Like you get this little highlight over your graph. Like, did you do something here? And did you eat something like berries or whatever it is, right? And anyway, I find it fascinating. If you're interested in doing that, I don't think I'll do it. I'm not planning to do it forever. I kind of decided I'm going to do it for a couple months, and it'll give me enough data in my head to understand what I'm looking at and what and that, to see the skyrocket that Little Caesars has on my.
Oh man, I don't do that no more.
It doesn't taste sweet, but man, your blood sugar goes.
So Abbott makes the Lingo, Dexcom makes the Stilo. I think there's Stello.
Yeah.
I think there are probably a number of different.
And they all look the same. When you look at the applicator, you kind of imagine them all coming out of the same Chinese factory. Like they're, so it's.
What's changed is it used to be NFC, so you would have to tap your phone to your arm, and now it's continuous, and it just does it all the time, so you always know.
I will say it does affect your phone battery life. Like I definitely noticed the difference in my phone battery life because I was constantly talking to it.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
It's cool. It's cool. It's fun.
I agree 100%. Of course, I'm a type 2 diabetic, so I kind of has to.
I was, the last time I was in to have something looked at, they said you're pre-diabetic.
So, that's when you should do it. Now's the time.
So I was like, okay,
now's the time.
Start pay attention to it.
Good job. Mm-hmm. Yeah. The other thing is take a walk after those carb-rich meals. It really helps. Yes.
When in those few times since getting the sensor, in the few times that I have a cartridge meal,
exactly, it really you just kind of go. It's like, well, again, it's gonna tell on me.
I do think, and again, part of it was this, like, what will happen to when Apple figures out how to do this on a watch. I think it'll have a bigger impact on the food industry than Atkins. Like it will, because it's not that everyone will pay attention to it, but I think a certain number of people are going to pay attention to it. And that number, that small percentage of watch users that do it will, I'd be selling stock if Apple releases a watch with it.
Yeah, I think it's harder to do than that sounds, to be honest with you.
I think it's really hard to do. I think that's why
in your arm.
I think it's really hard to do, and I think that's why Apple's trying to do it, is because if they can figure it out, it has a pretty big. It's hard. Apple likes to do things that are hard because it's also hard for other people to make it too.
True that. Thank you, Alex Lindsay. OfficeHours.global. That's the place to go every morning. Alex is there, streaming on YouTube at Office Hours Global.
And if you want to see a little music, we had another. We put up another stream. I just made it public because I just clipped off some front stuff. But we had a Oakland band named Perhapsy, and they were in the Airship Laboratories, which is in Richmond. And we've been kind of experimenting. So it's a pretty rough edit. We're going to put together a cleaner edit with better sounds and everything else. But if you just want to see us playing around in a music studio recording, you can. It should be up pretty close to the beginning of videos. I don't have it right in front of me here, but you can look at it. I think it's under Perhapsy or under Swell. Swell is the audio team that we worked with there. And we're going to keep on doing these. The next one's on the 26th, I think. So we're working with Airship Laboratories to figure out ways to stream. At first, we're just trying to figure out how to stream from a studio. But the goal is, of course, very high-end versions of streaming. It's whether it's spatial or HDR 5.1. Those are all things we're slowly adding to the pipeline. So you'll see more of that added on the 26th, and then of July, and then more through August. But by September, we should be producing some pretty high quality stuff. But if you want to see the early days of that, the first one was with my daughter's band with Joystick Failure, and this one is the next one. So that's what we're
Swell, Perhapsy Live. There they are. What kind of music is it?
Oh, it's very eerie. I guess I would say eerie. Really, kind of heartfelt, eerie, moody.
Nice.
So it was. Anyway, but really good, really good.
Good quality video too. Look at that. Is that the FX3
this is the
you're
roughest
shooting
version?
with?
These are Blackmagic 12Ks.
Nice.
So this was so we had I think 3 Blackmagic 12Ks and a 6K doing one of the wide shots. And then we captured all of that in logs. So we're going to re-edit it. They're going to do some work on some of the audio, and then we're going to re-edit it again to push it a little even harder than what we had there.
Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alex. Andy Anako, did it?
Not quite yet, but let's. I want to tail back to, remember how you're talking about. Hey, I want to see that video of George Martin and Brian Wilson.
Did you find it?
Actually, it's in your inbox right now as a beta tester. I wrote and posted a 3,000-word piece about God only knows.
That's where I heard about it. It was from Andy's blog.
Andy's blog.
Yeah, secret blog. Can I just say this is one of the reasons why things are like it keeps creeping back, because every time I sit down to write something, I can knock this out in about 400 words. 1 week later, like I've had to delete a 2,000-word. Like, okay. I think differently I have different opinions now than I did when I started this. I'm going to start rewriting this all over again. But yeah, I'm just making sure that there's plenty to read once you get there. So imminent,
soon.
Let's say.
Imminent.
So, but please read that piece, because I'm looking forward to seeing. As I'm very proud of it once it was done. But I was also aware of, okay, Andy, how many hours did you spend on that, and how many other things could you have written during that time? Let's have
think about that.
Let's have an all staff and just we're proud of this. We're happy with this. Let's just make sure we stay on our posting schedule, shall we?
Oh, come on! Don't become one of those. No, you can't be a bean counter and a creative. You got to pick a lane.
Well, Jason didn't pick a lane. He did pretty well.
That's true.
Actually, he left screaming, but still.
I picked so many lanes. Oh my God, so many.
All the lanes. Yes. Jason Snell, sixcolors.com, and if you want to see all the lanes he's riding, go to sixcolors.com/Jason.
Yes, please.
You will find a whole bunch of shows, including the one we mentioned. Mike Hurley and Jason do Upgrade every Monday.
Yeah.
There's the Six Colors show. There's Downstream.
Yeah. Good.
Julia's back, right?
No, she. Speaking of Matt Bellany, they decided that they want to put her on all their podcasts, and she is a full-time employee there. So
they stole her back. Huh?
I'm using Joe Dalian, who is great from Vulture, and occasionally Will Carroll, who is one of the founders of Baseball Prospectus, talking about sports streaming. So that's going on. So yeah, people can check that out. And the Total Party Kill, our actual Play D&D podcast at The Incomparable, just started a new storyline today that is one of my favorites, actually. We had a lot of fun playing it. So if people want to listen to nerds playing D&D on the internet, there's lots of podcasts. Ours is one of them.
You have to go to the Incomparable mothership to find that.
Yeah, just go to theincomparable.com and you'll see Total Party Kill there.
Awesome. Total Party Kill.
Yes.
Along with the Agents of Smooch. Doctor Who Flashcast.
We got lots.
Free the
whole network.
You got some good names here.
Podcasts, yeah.
Holy moly. Look at that.
I think what I need to do, though, is I need to come and sit while you guys are doing those and sit in Midjourney and just produce scenes. like the scenes of the that's how I got into computer programming, was trying to write software that would draw characters from the Dungeon Master's Guide.
Oh.
So that's what got me into,
a good idea.
Into programming. Anyway, I don't know. We'll see.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Alex. Thanks to our Club Trip members who made this show possible. Thanks to all of you who listen. We do MacBreak Weekly every Tuesday, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1800 UTC. We stream it live in 8 different places. Of course, for the club members, we stream in the Discord behind the velvet rope. If you know, you know. Otherwise, you can watch, everybody can, on YouTube, TikTok, X.com, Twitch, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Kick. So watch wherever you feel like it. We watch the chat from all of those places. Great to have all of you there. After the fact, on-demand versions of the show available at the website, twit.tv/MBW. There's a link there to our YouTube channel. That's good to know about. The video's there, and you can use it to share clips with friends. Good way to spread the word about MacBreak Weekly, and we appreciate it when you do that. Of course, the best way as a regular to listen to the show is subscribe in your favorite podcast player, because then you don't even have to think about it. You'll get the audio or video or both automatically the minute the show is over. By the way, if you do that, please leave us a nice review, will you? The reviews make a big difference in our total audience. Maybe in another 20 years, Apple will feature us as one of the original shows in the podcast sphere. Thank you, everybody, for watching. We'll see you next time. And as I have always said, it's my sad and solemn duty to tell you now to get back to work, because break time is over. Bye-bye. Get your tech news exactly how you want it with twit.tv. Tech News Weekly with Micah Sargent delivers quick hit coverage and exclusive journalist interviews, giving you the inside scoop on breaking tech stories in under an hour. Now, for deeper dives, I hope you'll join me, Leo Laporte, and a great panel of tech industry experts. That's every Sunday with This Week in Tech. We'll break down everything from AI breakthroughs to privacy concerns to cybersecurity alerts in the tech world's longest-running and most trusted tech news roundtable. So, efficient or in-depth? The choice is yours. Subscribe to both shows wherever you get your podcasts, and head on over to our website, twit.tv, for even more independent tech journalism.